Good evening, Inspilled Glimmers, and welcome back to another episode. The end of Shimmering Skies is upon us, and Set 6, the Azurite Sea, is just around the corner and has been fully spoiled. Alexandru, welcome back to the studio.
It's good to be back in the Blazer, being casually away in the States and whatnot.
It's been a while for sure. So, full spoilers of Set 6 are out, and we thought today we'd treat our viewers with a little something special.
Some guests, you might say?
Some might say that. So,
QBR guest from Beauty and the Beast.
Anyways, so we thought that the best way to amp up on what we did last time was to invite everyone from Quebec, or almost, who is going to be at Disneyland 2 months from now.
Yeah, at the Continentals in January.
Yeah. So with us today, we have QuestingQueenTCG, who top 16 at Vegas. We have Phil Asselin, who top 8'd the Toronto Challenge. Kevin Anctil, who top 16 Toronto and top 8'd Vegas.
Hey, what's up?
DeVoTeD, who top 16 Chicago. S4iler, who top 16 Fort Worth. And, of course, you, who top 8'd Atlanta. So almost all not set championships, DLCs represented as well.
Almost all of them, as I was joking last week, the only one that didn't place a Quebec person at the Continentals is Seattle. So, hey, everyone.
Hello.
Hey. Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us tonight.
Back.
So, really proud to see such a big delegation from Quebec going into the Continentals in Anaheim. That's what I was supposed to say.
In Anaheim, yes.
So, how excited are you guys to be going?
Pretty excited.
Yeah,
Yeah, very excited.
Hasn't settled in yet. We'll see. Ask me in a month.
Yeah. I mean, when this comes out, hopefully you guys are going to have details. I know PPC has announced that things are coming really soon.
Yeah, there's a countdown on our emails and whatnot. If you guys have seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a countdown to the Anaheim event. But as always with Ravensburger, we've been having announcements of announcements.
We received
which
exactly.
are
That's all companies. Wizards of the Coast are doing the same, exactly the same.
right.
So the way we're going to run tonight, we asked each and every one of you to go into your favorite color, basically, or the color that you represented at the DLCs that you won, and pick up one honorable mention and your top 5 for the upcoming set from a competitive standpoint. We're going to go through them in order from color to color. So let's get started.
We'll start with Ember.
All right, let's start with Ember. Questing Queen Clara. So, what do you have for us in Ember as your honorable mention?
Yes, thank you for having me tonight. So my honorable mention is Dale Mischievous Ranger. The reason why I put this card there is it's not necessarily one of the strongest cards. It's one of the enablers for certain strategies that we will see coming more and more. For example, with Chernobog, the 9/9 for 10 that gets a discount for each card in your discard pile, or also Kristoff that has a similar effect with songs in your graveyard in your discard pile. I mean, so others
definitely.
other synergies might be there.
Yeah, no, we see Ember definitely setting itself as the graveyard, the discard color, if we can say it like that, with stuff like Revive, Hades. So
yeah, discard. I would say discard and discard pile matter.
Yeah,
which is particularly good in this game where you don't have like an exile effect.
so far.
so far.
There's going to be another card coming up that could be pretty good with Dell, which is the Lilo. We'll see if it's on the list. I'm just assuming.
We'll see. We'll let Questing Queen
Maybe.
proceed with the next.
I want to
If
add
it's not
something
there,
to
though,
that.
she
Though.
might have a word.
I want to add to the fact that self mill is now a thing because of Dale. I have a possible outcome for next year is that they announced that they're gonna release some of the cards from the back cauldron, and the main villain in that film is the Orn King, and he's reviving undeads, right? So there could be a graveyard mechanism coming, like a discard mechanism coming, and so self mill could potentially be something that powers that up.
I like how you're thinking, actually.
Mhm.
Given how unbrand so far the cards have been with their source material, it's very possible.
All right, you want to move right along?
Yep.
All right, next card.
So in fifth position for me is Sugar Rush Speedway The Finish Line. So when I saw this card, I was like, okay, we had cards that had a location matter aspect to them. We had cards that said, oh yeah, you can move a character to a location, but locations in set 3 and 4 were great, but not like exciting, broken right on the spot. And this card is the start of like broken per se direct effect on the location. So
I mean, game 3 Lord, draw 3 cards, if that's not the definition of broken.
That card is crazy. It's only fifth. That card is insane.
but the reason why is in fifth place, you need some cards to play around it. So as a standalone, it's good, but not so good. If you build a deck around it, could really enable you some intense advantage. We saw Rapunzel being a really strong card since chapter 1, drawing you 3 cards, healing 3 damage. We saw that card performing well nonstop, and even now. So that's why I
Yeah.
put that card there.
I feel the weakest part of this card is that it's an Ember.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
the other
Like-
weakest part is the fact that it costs 6 to move there, so we kind of need more cards to move for free, which are
You
mostly
gotta-
in Ruby.
You gotta cheat your way in.
Yeah, exactly.
absolutely.
It's meant to be cheated. It's meant to be cheated. If you're paying 6 to gain your 3 lore and and draw your 3 cards, you're working way too hard.
The
It's
fact
like-
that the play pattern is here, like super late game, you go like, oh, like even if I top deck this, I can invest like a total of 8 mana, and like it's still like the effect's powerful. Like 3 lore out of nowhere, you might just win the game on the spot. So it's like never going to be more than 10% of the use cases of the cards. It's always going to try to cheat it, but you still have that play pattern where it's hanging around for a couple turns. It's like 6 mana, but yeah, like yellow red locations got to be something they're pushing right now.
Yeah.
yeah.
The-
Although,
We could
how
see
on point is
Ember-
it that... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
We could see Ember Emerald too. We have some cards that that allow characters to move to location. An action card in Emerald. So there's possibilities there.
Yeah, to me, the biggest constraint on this card is not much the cost, which we can cheat. It's more about moving from another location, which means you need another one on board. It's not like they didn't make another card with the same name last set to use with this one, but not sure yet if it's gonna be good together
I
enough.
was about to say, how on point is it that you have to cheat your way to the finish line in this game?
All right. Do you want to go to the next one?
Yep. Please. Next one is Chip and Dale. So I presented the Dale card that allows you to put cards into the discard pile, and Chip and Dale is like the finisher of that strategy line. So whenever you put a card into your inkwell, you may return a character card from your discard to your hand. This character is shift 5. It's relatively easy to put into play from many of the Chip or Dale characters that the set has to offer. And just imagine that in a game you have one Chippendale in the discard pile, another one in play, and you ink something, bringing back Chippendale. You don't care if your stuff it gets removed. You can just start over again. So I could imagine something in Amber, Sapphire,
Yeah,
inking matter. That is really pesky reanimator strategy.
I
Really interesting.
I'd push back on that just to say that like this feels like kind of like the Kristoff or the Chernobog, where the problems with those cards is just they're on their own quite expensive to cast and uninkable. So sometimes like they tend to be roughing in your hand. So whenever you have like a strategy where you need to be more proactive early game and you draw one or God forbid two of those cards, it's like this feels kind of weird. With the Dell that we just talked about, it's a nice curve, 4 and 5. You can't ink in the same turn, but it's a 6/6. What's the worst that could happen?
yeah. I mean,
It's quite sizable, and you can set up play patterns where you reanimate something the turn you play.
You could sing the genie song, "The Friend Like Me."
Oh,
Get
Yep.
back 3 cards.
That's actually
Yes.
pretty good.
I dig that.
Or Fishbone Quill gets you there.
Oh,
Yeah.
Fishbone Quill gets you there. There's quite a few good targets in Sapphire to bring back
yeah.
from your discard. Anyways, I like the idea, but it's a 6/6. For once, it's not gonna die to Medusa and it's not gonna die to Sisu. So just for that,
Wait. You forgot the
Wait.
set 1 OG test. Does it die to Maui?
true.
Yes,
It does
and
like
it
to Maui.
does.
But
I'll never tap. I'll never
And at
tap.
this price cost, it also comes right before the Maleficent Dragon. So yeah, but at least this one you can use his ability the turn you play it compared to like Chernobog that you just played and then the other player just like be preparing something. Like, you can revive at least 2 character in Sapphire when you play this. So it's interesting.
So the value engine keeps going if you set it up right. I can imagine this card being into fringe strategies at the very least.
Yeah, I mean you're an Ember where Bare Necessities is a card where like you're able to have the big Ursula, the shiftable Ursula. So like there's solutions there to be able to get in that heart a little bit, get in that hand.
next one.
Tiana. Okay, we're getting into my favorite strategies. Having this in a Amber Emerald aggro deck is really amazing. Honestly, as a 3-drop, a quest for 2, you're still on the aggressive curve, and you just put so much pressure on the resources of your opponent while still kind of offering a protection to all of your characters. If they don't deal with Tiana, they will still have to pay that tax to avoid getting their character's power, strength, lowered. So she has to be dealt with, and then your other characters are protected, they are able to quest, and so forth.
Yeah, it definitely stops a lot of the solutions for aggro right in their tracks. Where if you're not playing steel and just shooting everything down, challenging becomes a lot more of an issue.
Yeah, I know there are the brawls, the little Sisus, the big Sisu in this world, but she comes in really fast in the game. Unless you have the specific answer to deal with her, you have an amazing protection on board. I say it is different from Bodyguard. It might be better if you don't have anything on board. You pay for rush character. That rush character is getting nerfed.
Yep.
I
Is there a world where you want to like small Pluto into this on turn 2? You think?
If it were coming exerted, I think it would be a
Yeah,
great line. But
it'd be much
since
better than Bodyguard if it's
this,
already coming in exerted.
Yeah.
So if you could give Tiana Bodyguard, maybe.
I do want to mention that like she's a princess, and Queen Sensor Core is nearly there to being like the card is crazy. The deck is it's always been like a French deck, and it's a princess. The deck tends to want to be aggressive, and like it rewards you for playing a lot of creatures. Tiana kind of the same. You want pretty much all your stuff being creatures. So, oh, the princess deck, like this seems like an upgrade in it. Like it's running quite a few like mediocre princess. I think it's even playing like the 3-drop Moana that was already on Inkable. It seems like an easy swap. You remove the 3-drop Moanas and you put in the Tianas. Like it could be something.
And it's funny we mentioned Bodyguard because this card is not Bodyguard, but it's kind of pretty good with another Bodyguard on board though, because
exactly.
outside of Ruby, which can deal with one attack like characters at this time in the game at drop 3, like other colors or ink, they cannot really deal with it easily without attacking into it. So if there's a Bodyguard, this is going to be a nightmare for most other deck that doesn't run Ruby.
And like there's a last thing I want to mention with that card, because we were spitballing when we saw that card first and we were talking about it. Something that was really, really popular in Seattle was the Ember Steel aggro-ish deck. It was not like Steel Song, it was really, really more like aggro shells. And I was like spitballing about this with the other Steel Tiana from set 2. That when you have an empty hand and like, because you're playing aggro, so you're just like probably just vomiting your hand on the table with like a lot of characters. So you have quite some shields up with like your opponent cannot play actions. They have a hard time challenging. You probably have like, I don't know, daisies and whatnot to be able to push that lore advantage really quick. So there might be some kind of like incentive to play something else than just Steel Song and Ember Steel.
And I have to say these cards in Ember that are aggressive but also have 4 willpower have a lot of advantage over what they would be bad against, which is steel damage removal.
Yep.
So that's why Daisy is such like a crucial addition to that kind of strategies. And I think Tiana fits right into this. And of course, the downside is that those are both uninkable cards that are bad versus the Sisus.
And 4 willpower is the perfect number for Rapunzel, which comes the turn right after, so you can even attack into something that has 3 power and 3 strength and then heal with Rapunzel. So yeah, 4 is a key willpower number for Ember.
Up next.
Yeah.
Speaking of aggro strategies.
Yes and no. Actually, I think there's more use of Simba outside of a aggro shells. For sure, you can just let's say in Amber Steel decks, you can put the little Simba, a aggro quester turn 2, and then turn 3 you have Simba shift, and it allows great protection. I mean, it's one of the use, but it could be used also because it's a cost 5 in a as one of the alternatives for Amber Steel songs, allowing you to sing a whole new world, grab your sword, then came along Zeus. So that's an alternative. Also, it allows you to just play with Simbas. I calculated this and I plan to do something about it. And it's all Simbas, musical, and
she's cooking. She's cooking.
yeah, there's definitely something there because it's the second shift line we have for Simbas, and both shift cards we have are strong. This one is like bonkers for me, and the other one in the previous set allows you to banish an item or location that is in play. So that gives you really great coverage against a lot of stuff we have there, and Amber Steel in songs offer you great coverage in terms of answers. So I see something there, like good strategy lines in terms of singing.
I mean, The Lion King is a great Broadway musical, so there's that. But no, like it's an interesting take. Not gonna lie, I definitely see him in Steel Song because if only for that, he readies the Smees so that they don't take damage at the end of the turn.
Yep, it
So just
works
for that, it's
for people
already
who's asking.
a good option. But no,
It's Captain Simba.
it's Captain Simba.
So it might be far fetched, but also it's a prince. So tell
Pride
me if
Rock?
I'm wrong, but it should work with Pride Rock, right?
It does.
And
Hmm.
Pride Rock was already something that was pretty good with Rockstar Stitch, and Rockstar Stitch exert all your characters, and then you have Simba who unexert them all. So it might be a little bit of like a big setup, but it seems like it synergizes well with what it should. Like I think it's well designed to fit into that team as well, at least.
Hey, I might finally have a reason to play my Rockstar Stitches from set 3.
Yeah.
Are we moving along to the number one?
Yes,
So
number
the
one.
most influential card in Ember.
And it's Lilo. Definitely we kind of foreshadowed it earlier, but I think Lilo will remain in the discussion for now and the following sets. She has that presence just like Rapunzel. Like you can fit her in any strategies that revolve around the discard pile, or just any aggro shells that gives the deck some consistency, some like reliability. You cannot really run out of gas with one or two Lilos in your discard pile. Every turn you can just say, yeah, I pay 4, I put 2 Lilos, keep your hand full, and just force your opponent to just deal with Lilos, or you'll be questing for 2 each.
Yeah, and she is card draw in herself in that she's an extra card whenever she's there. If you're later in the game, you don't have any cards in your hand, you have some ink lying around. It's an every turn 2-drop. Sure, she comes into play exerted, but it's resources from your opponent that they're not using when they're dealing with her. So, and I love the fact that she's super rare instead of legendary, meaning she's going to be somewhat affordable, probably more in the Daisy Duck range than in the
Rapunzel
range.
Yeah,
Hang on.
she's accessible and like she's got stats that like make sense for any 2-drop. She's inkable, which is good. So that means you could play
The
4 of
fact that
them.
she's income.
Yeah, she reads like a card that should be uninkable, but she's not. So you might just play 4 of them. 1/2 that quest for 2 is good. And then like it's a big flaw of like the really aggressive decks to not really have end game, right? Like you're gonna have like a lot of resources being played in your early game, and then like you might just fall off. But with these cards, like there's always something to do with your ink. So just yeah, it seems good. And then if you
And she's a
play
great
her
card
with
to hold in
like
hand
the other
against.
cards,
Yeah, and she's a great card to hold in hand against this card because sure, let me discard her and then
I'm gonna play her from the discard pile.
I picture this with like Amethyst Chromicons, and you never run out of stuff. You're just always going to be spending the full mana and inking something every turn. It's just the aggro deck that's going to outdrain the blue players.
and if you roll back
So
just one
I'm gonna put
position with Simba, she could just be untapped at the end of your turn. And
Yeah.
that's pretty good too.
no, definitely one of the top cards, if not the top card of Ember, and the one that's got me the most excited from a gameplay perspective.
I think if I can add something, I think in the future she could get better. Also because of as we discussed in the honorable mention about the discard synergies. I think right now, for me she's a little bit overrated. I think people are overrating the fact that you need to pay before you draw, so you need to commit to the ink before. And let's say maybe you do that and you draw a 5-drop and suddenly you cannot play it. you played something that could be dealt really easily instead of something impactful. So that's one of the disadvantage that I see. Also, the fact that it comes exerted for me is like a huge downside, specifically for non-steel deck, where they get huge bodies, like in Ruby, right? Like Maui on board, you cannot realistically play Lilo from the discard. Like
It'll
she
take me
just
4 turns, but your Maui's gonna die.
yeah, but meanwhile, I have
Lilo.
also taxed 10 of your inkwell, right?
Yeah.
I have plenty.
So I don't think she's as great as you guys think for this set, but I think she could get much better with potential synergies.
I would argue that it's the shot in the arm that aggro needs right now, because that's the problem with aggro, that it's been like recurrent since like set 3, 4, and 5. Like, you're running out of gas so hard in like the mid game, and to have the option to just like I said, okay, you got to commit to her before you draw your card, but if everything in your deck costs like less than 4, it's fine. You're always gonna have your 2 quester that demands an answer.
Yeah, and that might justify running a 4 of World's Greatest Criminal Minds, so that the few things that are going to take her on turn after turn after turn, you just World's Greatest it. Like,
yeah,
this is a great answer to be prepared, not so much to big Sisu, but if you bait out the big Sisu and then World's Greatest it and come back with the 2/2 on it, it's like,
right. I also think she's better versus Steel, which was one of the weaknesses of aggro, right? Because Steel needs to commit a card to it, usually.
Exactly. Yeah, she's 1-for-1 removal against most Steel decks for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so are we going to the next color, being Amethyst?
Amethyst, the weaker color in set 5, didn't, for as much love as it got in set 1, 2, and I guess 3 as well.
Yeah.
It's been a little bit on the decline. We're seeing a little bit less of it recently. Phil, did set 6 give any tool that's going to bring Amethyst back to the table?
It could have. I mean, I didn't qualify with Amethyst, but there are some good cards for sure. As with any other color.
You played quite a bit of red purple back in your day. That's why we gave you that color.
Yeah, for sure. It was for sure my favorite color with the first chapter, and then the bounce effects are really good. And we could just go right in with my honorable mention, which is Rafiki. Rafiki's really nice. He's kind of the grandfather of Lion King, and it's something that it's really dear to me. This card looks fine. It's just, a little costly. It costs 9, maybe shift for 7. I was looking for Rafiki shift targets, and they're not really good. You could maybe play the first drop, but it's not the best first one drop that you could play. But putting one card in your inkwell and drawing a card is really good. 6/6, they're fine stats. You're not getting destroyed by everything so easily, and then it quests for 4, which is something you would hope for something that costs so much. So yeah, and then I guess you would probably pair him with blue cards, so Sapphire cards that let you put more cards in your inkwell each turn. But it's just a mention, because I'm not sure it's gonna see play for sure. But
no, I kind of feel that it's gonna go the way of Mufasa in that it goes into a blurple shell. It's kind of a finisher, but it kind of isn't. And Tamatoa is always going to be better in most blue shells, anyways.
It's definitely a finisher.
All right. So you said it was only an honorable mention, so I think you want to talk about the next one.
Yeah, so let's go with fifth
Let's go
place.
right in.
So it's an old card for sure. It's Tinkerbell Fast Flyer. So it's evasive. It's a 1/3 for 3, and quest for 2. So as long as there's not too many evasives on your opponent's side, it's gonna quest for you for quite a bit. We've seen this card. I think it was in red with Minnie Mouse.
Minnie?
And maybe something
Yep.
else. And is there like another color that has that? I'm not sure.
If there is, it's probably in green. 'cause
No,
that's
there's only
usually the
Minnie
color
Mouse.
Yeah,
Okay, so
it's
from
basically
set
Minnie Mouse.
so Minnie Mouse Surfer. So it's the exact same thing, but like Tinkerbell has some interesting shift lines, so that could be a plus for her.
Yes.
And being evasive with shifters is really nice, right? Because you could go, I'm questing with her, and while I don't need her anymore, I'm just gonna go and shift a big Tink on her. You know, like the All Star from set 1. You know, the 6-drop.
Yep.
So that makes a lot of sense. And you know, like just from her stats, it makes a lot of sense. You have some Amethyst aggro decks that could play her. They have a lot of choices, so that's kind of iffy, but it could happen.
But that one's inkable, which a lot of
Yes.
the heavy questers in Amethyst usually aren't. So no, I can see it, and I'll be honest, I didn't think of the steel one when I
Yeah.
first looked at the card. So, but being 3 into 4, she's definitely such a better target than the steel one that we had in set 1.
Yeah, because we've seen like the one that draws to discard, and we've seen the other
Yeah.
one that is evasive. I think it's green.
Yeah, but she costs 4 already, so
Yeah.
like you're not shifting
Yeah.
on curve.
Yeah, it's not the best
No.
curve. And then if you have on hand the big tank on 4, it's really good. It could destroy some board positions. So it's really something that your opponent needs to be aware about. So yeah, that could be something. I mean,
Yeah, big
I
take on
know.
4 makes something like
Yeah,
she does a
this
lot of work.
combination is not the most played, but it's
Yeah, it doesn't do anything broken. Is the problem with purple steel in general? It's too fair of a deck.
Yeah, it's really like the meat and potato like fair deck that you're just gonna turn guys sideways, maybe just bump into the other card and like hope for the best and like that everything lines up correctly, right?
Yeah,
But what I really like about the Tinkerbell at 3 evasive, there was such a thing in set 1 that it was you gotta respect the Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell on 3, you gotta respect the Tinkerbell on 4, even if your opponent does not have it in their hand, and it will do that in Amethyst Steel, I'm sure.
Yeah, she commands removal in a way that Mini Surfer probably didn't. So no, it's go 1
Moving along.
and a comment at that.
yeah. So number 4, I think.
Yep.
3. So number 4 is Diablo Obedient Raven, which is probably not a shift target. You know, Diablo has its green shift. It could be, but you know, like you kind of lose some of the potential, which is, you know, to draw back your card. And I like this card because it doesn't really trade with anything. There's no strength to this Diablo, but it's still gonna draw your card back, so it evens out. And then it's something that you can play on turn 1, and that you don't need to cash in like a Chernobog follower. I'm not saying it's better. It could be as good. It could replace him depending on what you're doing. Because with this one, you can actually just always quest, and then your opponent needs to dedicate some of his time to remove him. Whereas, like if with Chernobog, you always kind of need to know, well, if I'm gonna get removed, I need to draw right now, and then you're not really sure, and then maybe you're gonna miss like one lore because you're a little afraid of like removal or rush. So with this one, it's just always there.
Yeah, well, I feel it's such a nice like palette that they give you as 1-drops for Amethyst. Like now you have Chernobog Follower, you have the Magic Broom, you have this. Like it lets you do exactly what you want to be doing with your 1-drop, which is like a big thing for the color. I feel like not all the colors have great choices every on this like step of the curve, and here like you'll always accomplish what you want to be doing. Like I feel this is probably a more aggressive card that you always want to be like turning sideways until it gets removed, right? And it buys back itself by giving you a card in probably a strategy that doesn't draw like a bajillion cards. So
yeah, you say that about Amethyst, so then we'll see. Feels pretty
I
good
mean,
about
like,
the library, let me tell you that.
yeah, sure.
Given that you now have the Diablo on 1, the Cusco on 2, and then between the snakes and the foxes, like you have something that if you can bounce, you have a bounce target, and if you can't, it's going to buy itself back when it's vanished by the opponent anyways. So you're starting to have a nice little curve that's going to reimburse itself by itself when your opponent inevitably removes it. So
not only that, but these strategies are always good on the play, but they're pretty like lackluster on the draw sometimes. But this fits really nicely into Crab on turn 3 to be able to take back some of this board control on the draw, which is quite important versus some type of decks. We were already able to do that with Cusco, but this being able to be slotted either on turn 1 or 2 with multiple other things is so much more cost efficient than the turn 2 Cusco. This was my one of my, like, if not it was my second most. I really like that card.
I kind of wanted to put it higher. The thing is, it's not really flashy, so like I kind of wanted to talk about bigger cards, but it just makes more sense because in the end, I really like simple cards that I know that are going to make some impact. Because the other ones, they always need a lot of things to go right to make a flash, but then this one just makes sense.
Some would argue that the most impactful card of last set was Pete, which is an uncommon. So,
a 3 for 3,
doesn't have to do the big thing to be really impactful.
I like Pete, I like Tipo, I like small cards. And then like this one, it's kind of harder because you can't really switch and kill like a 1-drop from your opponent if he's going more aggro, but he's going to be better with Crab, so you're probably going to want to play 4 of them, and that's good. So it's a great card. It could have been second or first.
And from like just a matchup standpoint, if I look at Steel Song, you don't want to be like Cinderella let the storm rage on at Diablo. Like it kind of kills your vibe of, I'm going to remove their 1-drop.
It was a big thing in front of the turn 1 Cinderella. You don't really want to play, but then you could just play this one, and they don't want to remove it, so you could actually have a Mim Snake on turn 2, which is something you can't really have most of the time.
So your number 3.
So Hizma, Conniving Chemist. She's 4, she's inkable. She's a 3/3 and quest for 2. So it's fair stats for something that's going to draw you cards. So she says, tap, if you have fewer than 3 cards in your hand, draw until you have 3. So obviously she's going to be good in a really fast strategy, something that wants to empty their hand really fast. She could be good with something else that we're going to see later on. So I'm going to foreshadow something else. But, in the end, if you're playing something that's really fast that wants to empty your hand, she could be good. You could anchor before that so that in the later turns, turn 5, turn 6, when you're empty-handed, she's going to draw you some cards. The big thing for me is that she dies to a lot of things. Like if you want to actually draw cards when you're empty-handed, that could be on turn 5, turn 6, when Medusa could get her. You're probably not going to tap her more than once because she's only 3/3. So you could activate her, draw 2, draw 3 cards, and then she's probably going to go to anything that's on the board. Usually, these colors don't have like a lot of protection, a lot of bodyguards or whatnot. But she looks fun.
Well, it looks like a great card for like purple-based aggro. Like you play that on turn 4, and then on turn 5 you just reload. You probably are close to empty-handed if we're thinking about old decks like Ember Amethyst that just like run out of hand really, really quick in the game. And now you're just like actively just reloading and probably being able to deploy what you just drew on turn 5. You just put a ton of pressure on your opponent.
Yeah, my pushback on that would be that, like, in those types of strategies, you just paid 4 for that, and you untap. You would rather probably just quest for 2 and just try to like get through the finish line, because like you draw the card, you deploy them, they kill her, you miss 2 lore, and then you have like a bunch of little things. Maybe they'll quest together for 3, 4, but maybe some things like a spell comes along. So it's not sure. It feels like if you wanted to be drawing into those small strategy like Amethyst Chronicons we talked about earlier, like and from previous set, it's like kind of exactly what you want. But I do think Hizma like will have some sweet combos with her, but I'm not even convinced if like in the small aggressive strategies you'd rather just be questing for 2 at that point.
Yeah, perhaps this
Well-
card will see more play in Ruby Amethyst because you could quest and then ready where they cannot quest again and then tap it for the draw. And if you use like the little LeFou, you can remove 1 card from your hand by playing it and then ready and draw 3 more. So you can still have your questing power while readying it for the draw. So maybe that would be a better use of this card.
I could think also about Amethyst Sapphire. With the really aggressive ramping style with the T-pose.
Some kind of like middle curve filler for Blurple.
Yeah,
Like
middle
reloading for the
curve
quill, basically.
It
Yeah.
doesn't Blurple as like an Isma that's shift also that's playable or something?
The
that's
6
true.
drop. They have the 6 drop that
You shift that?
that you can like reshuffle something like anything and draw 2. So it could do work actually.
And if anything, she'll be like, to me, her worst case is she does like Ursula Deceiver of All, where you're putting her on board and it kind of forces your opponent to remove her. What I used to call the Karn effect in Magic. So it's, if you don't deal with her, if you don't commit resources into removing her, she's gonna go like and run away with value. So you kind of have to deploy resources the turn she's played, or else it sucks. So to me, the Ursula Deceiver of All kind of does that, where it's not that often that you'll actually sing twice with her, but sometimes it's just stopping your opponent for a turn might be enough to go with it. So who knows?
Going to number 2.
So number 2 is a genie. This one is Wish Fulfilled. So it's a 2/4 for 4. It's evasive once again, and then in quest for 2. Just that would be fine, and then when he comes into play, you draw a card. So that's just a great
Pseudo
rate.
Rabbit.
It's a rabbit. It's also a genie.
Such card's so good.
It's evasive. It's great. It buys himself back. It's not inkable, but it's fine because I would not want to hank him.
Exactly. It's like rabbit. Like you don't ink your rabbit anyway, right?
Yeah.
Even if you could.
So then
It'll draw you
could,
inks. Fine.
Yeah, you could destroy him, but it's fine. Like he already drew his card. There's no effect to him when he leaves, but then again I think it's also great. And then evasive stuff. He could get your opponent's Diablos, which is something that you really want to do.
Absolutely.
And if not, he's just gonna quest, and questing for 2 is big game. So there's not much to him, but it's just a straight good card. So
Yep.
Yeah, I like him.
50 Shades of Rabbit.
Yeah,
I think he replaces rabbit in aggressive decks 100%.
Yeah.
I think we've seen that like even red purple at some point in set 5 was losing equity against red blue because it was way too slow playing your rabbit, bouncing it, playing your rabbit, bouncing it. Meanwhile, red blue was just like setting it up a dime and winning in 3 turns, right? And you have cards in hand, but you were not questing meanwhile. This puts pressure onto the board while keep up your resources. It's quite hard to deal with in like challenge matter matchups. And also it fits really nicely for Rapunzel in Amethyst, Amber Amethyst, because you are able to, let's say, take out a SME and leave a 3 damage on it for Rapunzel value. So like the stats line is incredible. It deals with Diablo, it draws a card. This card does everything. I think it's definitely for me my favorite Amethyst card.
I don't remember if it's Peter Pan's Shadow or Shadow Finder, but one of them gives rush to your evasives.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I think it's the Shadow Finder. It's the 3-drop one, so you can go one into the other.
Yeah, that I would want to add that to me it's a start of maybe like sure that guy is great to bring back to your hand with mims and stuff, but Amethyst since I can remember has always been like you just put the mim package in all the Amethyst deck and then you figure out something else. And it's like this does the rabbit job in decks that maybe you wouldn't want to put like the full mim package. Maybe you just keep the foxes because they're just great board like controlling tools and stuff like that. And you're like, oh, just put like the 8 mims, the 8 merlins in all Amethyst deck and then go figure out something else. It's like okay, maybe now you can start seeing Amethyst as doing something else than just the bounce package. Like this guy is also actually good to bounce, so you're like, oh, you have your pick, but you don't have to be bouncing him. The guy is just good on its own. You pay 4 mana, you're always happy on turn 4 with that. So and turn 5, you do other stuff. He drew you into other stuff. So maybe it's like can start to see Meta's color shift a bit because to me that color always felt kind of boring. Just like slot in the Queen Castle, the 8 Merlins and Mims, and like you already have half a deck.
Yeah. Also, we already have the Jafar that wins lore when you draw cards and use Exerted. It's evasive. Now you have the Genie, and there's a lamp that does something if you have the Genie, does something if you have the Jafar. So now we're starting to have kind of a shell for it that might make the combo eventually workable. Like the combo was tried in set 3, it wasn't good. It was too easy to predict. Basically, you just dealt with the Jafars.
Yeah.
But the more of those cards that like, oh yeah, you play it draws a card, the more support for that comes in, the more that Jafar might not be the full on combo deck, but more of a finisher for a general Amethyst deck, basically.
May I add also that even though the Jafar combo was predictable, it was kind of brutal also.
Oh yeah.
So having Genie in Amethyst color, we have the Shift Jafar in Amethyst, we have the item in Amethyst for Jafar and Genie. We can have like surprise color that supports the Jafar combo, and people will not see it coming. You can,
like imagine a green Jafar with Clarabelle that you end your turn and just draws you 5, 6, 7 cards, wins you a ton of lore, and surprise!
The good old 2/7 drops combo.
Yeah, exactly. the good old like 14 mana do nothing.
Well, do something, but
yeah, but
Dirtle Fest. So we're gonna go to the first pick in Amethyst.
Speaking of genies.
Yeah, so my first pick is not the cleanest one, but it's a really powerful one. So it's Genie Wonderful Trickster. So 7 ink, inkable, 4/7, which is like a little shabby, but it's fine. And then what you want him for is he could shift for 5, so come in earlier. And whenever you play any card, you draw a card. But at the end of your turn, you just put back all your cards at the bottom of your deck. So for sure, that's a really big build around. It's probably something that you don't really need to build around if you're playing really low curve, really something that's aggressive, because you're gonna have him and then just draw something, play hit, and maybe play 2 to 3 cards during the same turn. You won't really have any cards in your hand at the end of your turn, but you're just gonna go back for seconds the next turn. One of the big things that I don't really like about him is that you kind of are incentivized to play in your opponent's Be Prepared, because once you do this, you're probably playing a lot of characters, and then if you're getting Be Prepared, you're losing everything, but it still sounds kind of good. So
seems fine to rebuild after Be Prepared, though, right?
Yeah.
You have no more hands. You lost your whole hand.
Yeah.
And your whole board. Not sure if you can rebuild it.
Well, that's what I meant. Like you never really have anything else because you lost your whole hand, but you know.
I just want to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you can play stuff from your discard pile, that counts, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you play a card from your discard, you draw a card.
Yeah, and I was about to add, like we were talking about 2 7-drop combo, like this one with Clarabelle is pretty neat because you can still have a big hand at the end of the turn to start the next one because you decide the order of the trigger. So could make it more relatable against like Be Prepared and stuff like that.
Yeah, as long as Clarabelle is triggering.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Like
So if
Clarabelle
your
needs to be
opponent has
triggering before you empty your hand. So
if your opponent has less cards than you, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
if you're playing Genie on 7 and a Clarabelle on 7, like I hope you don't have a full grip at that point, anyways.
And I mean, you can shift both of them, so you probably use 2 cards to play them, and yeah, your hand is probably close to empty.
Yes.
So this one fits right in with pick number 2, which is a 4 cost. This one's just for 5. The other one you're probably going to want to play 4 anyways, so this one you could play some amount. Also works kind of good with the other one of the top 5 cards, which is Yzma. If you play him, you don't have any hand. You just untap with 1 card. You just draw a lot of them. You just go back to 3, and then you just have the choice to play whichever cards you want and drawing them back. So you get like a lot of cards that you're going to see to fill your 6 or 7 ink that you're going to have for yourself on that particular turn. So
you need a good support color to remove your opponent and make sure that like he
remove your opponent.
Yeah, remove the opponent altogether. Just
altogether. It's not really
Isn't that what
Lorcana
this
like,
card's
but
doing
it's
anyway?
yes.
All right. So now we can move to the next color on the agenda. It would be emerald.
Yep, Kevin.
Me?
Let's see what you have for us.
Forgot I was third.
Something
look.
spicy, hopefully.
Transport Pod is probably not a playable card. It is my honorable mention. Just touching back all the way to when we started with Clara and we started to talk about the locations deck. First thing I saw when I saw the other thing, first thing I checked when I saw the Sugar Rush card is I just loaded up all locations in the game. I'm like, okay, like is it just like green? Is it just like yellow, red, or can I fit another color? And I don't think green is quite there. Like locations wise, I think like it's missing a little bit of something, and you're not really like putting Tranquil Cove in like a location deck, and the other locations like they're all the interesting ones are all kind of uninkable, so you just have too many. So I don't think it is the time for this card yet, but I would highly like always watch it every time they release a new set. Just go back to it because if they release 1 or 2 more good Emerald locations, you're almost there. And this is one of like the cleanest, easiest way to like turn 1 curve, turn 2 the speedway, turn 3 anything, and turn 4 you're triggering it, and it's gonna. You need another location on turn 3, but it's getting there. I don't know. I don't think it's good. I don't think green is the location color yet, but they seem to be putting some amount of works toward it. And I always keep my eye on whatever next they release.
It gives you kind of an incentive to play the like high move cost locations, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Emerald already had was it Cusco's Palace that give ward and evasive to a character?
That's a good one. I think it costs 2 or 3 to move.
Yeah.
Just put something in RLS Legacy, the big ship is like even that is like good enough. It's worth the 1 card that you use for the item probably. You need to have like a dedicated deck for that synergy to work, but we'll see the future what the future brings.
Fair enough.
So on to your number 5 pick.
And I almost wanted it to put it higher, so I don't know if that's a take or anything, because it feels like a completely like bad card, right? It feels like it's just a 1/3 for 2. But a couple of things that's going for it. It's a Stitch. There's some good Stitch shift lines, and as far as 2-drop goes, it's just like you always have. Or rather, you don't always have the perfect curve in Lorcana, right? You can't always go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And a repeatable way to spend mana make relevant things on the board, like always going to be trading up if you wanted to trade up, always going to be like challenging another 1 or 2 drops. It's like fairly hard to remove on turn 2. It's a 1/3. It's a stitch that's going to stick around, and just a constant way to spend mana. It's that's why I liked Cusco so much in the last set and the blue ink. It's just like, sure, it's 4 mana, but it's repeatable. So whenever you're like low resource kind of game and you're in the end game and you draw this 2-drop, it's like, okay, I drew my 2-drop and I have like 8 inks and we're kind of like even on board, but now my 2-drop is going to be threatening their Tomatoa. I'll just put it all in my stitch and kill the Tomatoa. So I don't know. Maybe you guys will roast me for it, but I like it. I like the stitch.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Stitch, and if anyone has looked up in the official app or at the numbering and wondered what he's doing in the Ember cards, because that's an Emerald Stitch in the middle of Ember, well, it's set 6. He's card number 26, and he's experiment 626.
I see.
He's a little trickster, you see.
I saw that.
He crept up into the Ember cards, but I would say. I would say I agree with you with the fact that we don't have enough ink sinks in the game quite yet, and having one that's aggressive feels nice because we've always been saying that like mid-range decks and control decks are like the marquee archetypes for the game as of yet since the last year of the game. Having something a little more aggressive, a little more punchy is quite nice in my opinion.
Wouldn't say it's an aggressive card in the fact that it's not questing super well. It contests the board pretty well.
By aggressive, I meant more punchy. Like you ram it into stuff.
I mean, are you really gonna want
like a Ruby card?
Take out your Maui to take like whatever their 4-drop is? If on turn 5 they're just gonna put 2 inks into their stitch and finish your Maui with it.
Yeah, and in Emerald, most card has very low power, so having this instead of having to run like Quickie would be helpful against like a Queen's Castle dropping on turn 4. You can at least do more damage to it. So.
That too.
I mean, Quickie is such a better card than this, though.
Yes, sure, but I mean, this is like an early way to deal with locations and whatnot, or with like bigger willpower characters. So.
I would
also
say
like we'll see how it turns out, but we might eventually get some Power Matters card where like we already see in Ruby characters with strength or more and stuff like that. You know, maybe
with
he gets bigger Maximus.
That's what you wanted to say, Clara. I know that's what you wanted to say.
But there's another card. There's the location in red.
Snuggly ducking.
You got it. Yeah. So that card's when you have a character inside and you challenge, if the character has like power 3 or power 6 and more, you gain some lore, I believe.
Yeah. Yes. This card does a lot of little things. I don't think it's slotting in to any existing deck. Like I'm thinking Purple Emerald right now. Like is a great deck. It's probably one of the best deck in a metagame we're used to. And I don't think I would put Stitch in it, but I would start looking at like other Stitches combos, like maybe some kind of weird yellow green deck. Yellow green is
alien yellow green deck.
Yeah, sure. just number 4. No, that my number 5. Sorry, but
number 5. Yeah.
So we're going to number 4 then.
It's crazy because green for me is the best color of the set, and with this one it's the third one is not in my top 10. So it says a lot about Emerald, I think.
Yeah. Oh, I do think Emerald is great. I tried to go a little bit out of the way, but I do think Emerald is probably first or second color this set. I think Emerald has a lot of good tools, and it's already a good color. So, like, I don't want to bring up the Diablo discussions that are happening right now in the social medias, but green maybe is having a little bit too much fun right now. I just wanted to talk a bit about Mosquito Bite and kind of like Stitch. I don't think it's slotting into any existing deck right now. And I probably should have swapped them or put one of them into honorable mention. But green or the Ravensburger has been pushing green as like the damage matter kind of colors, and it's never quite there. But I think a card exactly like Mosquito Bite, where you're gonna get that value somewhere else. You're gonna get, there's some cards that like draws if your opponent have things that are damaged. There's some cards that triggers a bunch of like little different stuff. So like the damage matter green decks, I think is almost there to be like a playable archetype and try to like brew with it. Even closer than I would say like the location green decks are. So I don't know, Mosquito Bite looks like a sleeper to me, where at some point we're gonna wake up, we're gonna check a deck, it's like, oh, it has all this like opponent has damage stuff matter cards in it, and it's kind of just working now, where before it was just always not consistent. And it's a very consistent piece. This is inkable, so you can like kind of just run them in impunity, and sometimes it's gonna finish off something. It doesn't care about resist at all, and if it's bad, you just ink it. So
Yeah, I mean, the green always felt like that side of green always felt like it needed steel, because that's the only way you could efficiently put damage on stuff.
and
Now
it,
you open
it
up the
was not
possibility
working.
of other color combinations.
If
like
you
that
play
just
green
makes
steel,
the
you
mana
won't
cost
play
one
the other
more.
good stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, green has been, the other green mechanics have all been overshadowed by this card. Let's put it that way, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Agree on that.
Yeah, I like the fact that this is a very cheap action, because there's new cards that wants to play multiple actions in one turn, and maybe we'll see the Airfall coming back. Like there was a very funny machine gun deck that was not so good but very fun to play. So maybe this can goes into playing more Airfall deck, which is in Emerald 2 anyway. So
you could play like the Pete from set number 2 that was questing for a bajillion when you were playing actions.
Yeah, same thing. The action mattered. So like it goes action matters, it's a cheap action. Damage matter, it's a cheap thing that puts damage counter that you can move around with other colors and stuff like that. So for me, it's a sleeper pick. I don't think it's a super powerful card, but I did want to talk about it. So put it in my top 5.
Right, moving on to number 3.
Goofy. What's the name of the other card that does exactly this but worse?
Cusco?
Yeah, so the Cusco. For me, this just feels like a better Cusco with some
inkable Cusco.
Yeah, inkable Cusco, which is crazy. Like the fact that this card is inkable also is like it just all the goodies and they're all inkable. So it just I'm imagining just some play patterns with it where whenever you will untap with a Goofy, you're gonna quest with it right away. It's gonna die 90% of the time, but giving ward to whatever else is left on either your board or in your end that you're gonna play that turn, which is the highest questing possible, and just have like a 1-2 punch of 2 turns in a row where all my stuff that's gonna quest is ward, and you play that in like we saw one of our buddy play like a purple emerald deck that was super aggressive based on Curse Merfolks and with the Cuscos, and that deck always felt okay. He managed to make the top 64 in Vegas, and it always was like on the outskirt of being like a decent deck. This feels like it could push it over the edge. Like it's just a very, very decently costed rated card. Like you pay 5 mana and you get a good decent amount of stuff out of your 5 mana.
Yeah, I like the fact that this card might enable a color pairing that we didn't see a lot, like the Emerald Ruby deck, where you could technically untap this and have 2 untapped ward character each turn. So if you have ways to untap it, it's pretty good. The new Simba could also do it. So yeah, if they can enable more color pairing, I think that would shift the meta and have a cool impact.
Definitely a fun one, and even if it's just, and pardon me for saying this, even if it's just giving Diablo ward, that's still value.
Just giving Diablo ward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would you say
people
that?
just want to say the world. I just want to see the world burn.
Yeah, exactly.
Up to number 2?
Yeah, let's go up.
Yeah, not sure I believe into the blue-green yet, but this is fairly push. And there is a blue basil that also is close to being playable, and this shift. And this is just like a great post, like Fishbone Quill. I am low resource because I use my Fishbone Quill. You're going to start being low resource yet. It's just like same thing as like the Stitch that we talked about earlier. A repeatable way to like spend extra mana in the mid to late game where getting some value. And if your opponent doesn't have any more cards, or they're like, if they have 1 or 2 cards, this card is great. You're going to get rid of their last resources. But if they're also empty-ended, it's a 4/5 that quests for 2. It's decently statted. And yeah, so I think blue green is fairly close to being something. I did try just before Vegas, last DLC, where I wanted to try the cowbell deck with the Clarabelles and the fishbone quills and stuff like that. And that deck felt that there was something there, but missing exactly cards like this. I think one of the best cards in that deck for me was the Cusco's. If Cusco was great in the meta, it was like heavily considered the cowbell deck. Like a way to spend extra mana, a way to being rewarded to ramp quickly to 6, and then after that do stuff. Like you're on 6, you untap with a fishbone quill, you play this, you ink, you pay 1, you fishbone, you pay 1, they discard 2 card. I don't know. I see a lot of play patterns with that card, and I also, as a quick aside, did not put in my honorable mention or top 5 the 7 mana uninkable card that discard their whole hand. I don't think you'd want to be doing that. I think you'd much rather be doing the Basil stuff.
Yeah, the do my bidding, or I don't remember the name of the
Bend to
card.
my will.
Yeah, bend to my will. Like this, I feel it's so hyped because like, oh, you can just like lock your opponent out of the game on turn 4 if all the stars like align correctly, and I think it's just like cutesy. Like you were saying, this is good with blue. I feel it's like it could also be quite decent with steel if you want to lean into like the more discard aspect of like the Zansayed deck from Vegas.
Yeah,
like,
I saw it in a Prince John deck, but it's the same color.
Yeah, you could like just shift this onto like to a morph with having like the really good mid range package around it. I feel it's quite decent enough.
So there's a very interesting opening in blue. That is the 1 turn Basil, the turn 2 Tipo, turn 3 Shift Basil, Sing Under the Sea. On turn 3.
I did see that. Like I do think that the blue Basil is the best one to shift onto that one. So kind of this card felt like blue green to me, but it doesn't have to be. But yeah, that exact line is like very strong. It deals with the board, and after that, you're going to deal with the hand.
We don't talk about Bruno.
Yes, I mean, like just singing "Don't Talk About Bruno" is like feels insanely good on turn 3, 4.
Yeah, well, it gets you vibes from the deck you played in Vegas, like the yellow green discard deck where you were like turboing out sometimes some Under the Seas.
Yeah, so. Great card. I think is definitely going to see some play, and not sure if blue green is going to be something, but if it is, this card will be great in it.
And I gotta mention, like the enchanted for this one, I think it's one of the prettiest cards in the set. It's like taste based, but like I showed it to Nick like when it came out, and he was, and we were like so hyped about that art. It's so pretty.
May I add, like a friend like me, singing friend like me with Basil feels like brutal.
What's a friend like me?
You need the ink to pay the 3, but yeah.
Both players ink 3 times off of their top of their deck.
Yeah.
So it's not directly turn 3 when you shift Basil. It's on turn 4.
No, it's on turn 4, but turn 4 discard 3 cards. You don't care that they have 3 more inks. No, there's no hand left.
That's cool. So we're ready for your number 1 pick.
I don't know if everybody's on the same page, but to me, it feels like top 2 cards in the set, arguably maybe top 1. This guy, I would say top 1 probably. This card is evasive, deals with opposing Diablos, having a way to cheat out a crazy amount of lore in the mid game. You're always going to have to be mindful when you're playing against green. You're like, okay, now I need to get rid of my like damaged characters because like they're just going to win out of nowhere. And we've seen in Lorcana, like getting a lore, like a high amount of lore on 1 or 2 cards, like right now you see the goats and always how the Amethyst deck are going to close out the game. It's always going to, at some point, they're losing the board because all they've been doing is drawing cards and their creatures maybe are a little bit understated. And at some point, they go goats, bring back goats, and that's how they're going to close out the game. You do it with the Go Tamago, and you're just going to do that much better than Goat. You just, if you ever bounce that guy back to your hand, if they have a huge damage character, if you like play against like a Tamatoa deck, that guy's is a chunky boy. You can have a lot of damage counter on him, and you can just like win the game off of it. So this card play patterns are crazy. I think you can run it on turn 2 as a 2/2 evasive, and you're not like unhappy about it. Maybe sometimes you're going to bounce it to your hand. So it does it all. It's like find 2 drops, compare it to like a Seer Hiss or something, and in late games it's a crazy top deck. So like when is that card not good? Not sure. Like it feels like it's good at every point.
It's inkable, so never.
That too.
Yeah, the floor is like so high on it, you know?
Yeah.
Like the ceiling is high, but the floor is also high, which is, you don't say that a lot.
No, it's broken. It's a broken card. Like I think it was a mistake. Like it's absolutely
It's at
broken.
least uninkable. It feels like we'll see. Maybe we're completely smoking, but
No. We're not smoking.
Guys,
This is
Emerald
one of the
needed
best cards in the
something.
game.
They're so weak right now.
yeah, everyone needs more help. As we've been
This is fine. This is fine as it is, I believe, because it's very situational. That you're gonna get like 3-4 lore out of it in best
just 2
case
lore
scenarios.
is good. Just 2 lore is good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
situational that you're gonna like gain crazy amount of lore, but the fact that it's a great 2 drops, late game could gain you up to 4 or 5 lores, and in the mid game just spend your extra mana on it while progressing your lore progress is just.
It's also in the same color as the Muses, right? So you could do it multiple turns. You have Bibbidi Babbidi Boo. You can play it multiple turns at the fucking same turn. Sorry, I'm this card pisses me off. Like it's absolutely broken, and I'll stand by it.
Yeah.
Well, you have to pay the kicker cost to it, at least.
Who cares?
It's the ghost cost.
It's 2.
The goat.
Yeah.
And I think, Kevin, you mentioned the very strong point of this card is the fact that the opponent needs to play around, so it kind of forces them to potentially do misplay if you don't have it in your hand, because they might want to try like cleaning up their own board even if you don't have it, so they destroy their own creature for no reason because you don't have it, but you might. So it's having cards that makes your opponent having harder time playing the game well and having to guess is also always strong. The menace is very powerful
in the mid games. Yeah,
very very good point. Like even like the Ruby decks, they always want to value trade with their Maui. Like even like the red blue with ice blocks, right? You're gonna use your ice block, so Maui doesn't take too much damage, so we can take out another character. So you always want more out of your single cards that you're challenging with. And when the opposing player is playing Go Tamago, you need to maybe I just need to trade in that character so that I don't open myself up to a top deck Go Tamago.
Yeah, you don't even tap your ice block, and they're like, "Oh, maybe he forgot he could have saved his Maui." It was like,
no. I'm just playing around that stupid 4-drop, like, and it's gonna be a 4-of, right, in all the decks that plays it because it's inkable.
Yeah.
So
I think it's probably the first time where a value trade is not a good idea, and that's
exactly
crazy because usually trading is quite simple in Lorcana, but this one will mix things up.
You can sing a what's the word? You can Zeus a stupid Flaversham.
Yeah.
And gain 5 lore off
lore.
of Flaversham having 6
Feels
toughness.
so good.
Ugh.
Feels so good.
Finally, Flaversham having 6 toughness.
Please buff Flaversham, makes him 5 HP. Thanks.
Oh god. All right. Well, definitely this is one of the better cards. I just want to do a little segue before we move to the second half of the video. I think Kevin, I think Philip weren't able to stay with us until the end. I don't know if this is still the case. I just wanted to give a send-off to you guys before we continue with Ruby.
Yeah, I will have to go. We've been talking for a little bit. It was very enjoyable. Thank you for having me. I'll be watching the rest of the video to see everybody's hot take. I do want to see. I do want to see where the Ruby colors ranking ended up, and we'll see. I think we all agree that green was one of the best colors, but I am curious of what you guys think is the second best color. if we can talk about that, and then I will probably leave.
And definitely wishing the two of you the best of luck in Anaheim in 2 months' time. Hopefully, I'll be able to join you guys there, but if not, I'll be watching from the sidelines.
Yeah, because you're coming with me, right?
I mean, if there's a spot.
All right, but yeah, if I can interject on what you're saying, like about what I think is the second best color, I'm gonna foreshadow it. It's blue.
You think so? There's
Shadiest
one
color.
good card. What about the others?
A very, very good card, but I'll let S4iler talk about it when we get to it.
Definitely.
Now we're going to Ruby. We're saying goodbye to Philip. We're going to saying goodbye to Kevin. Have a good night.
Thanks a lot to you guys.
Thanks
Thank you
for
so
having me.
much.
And passing the mic to Pat for Ruby,
Yeah.
starting off with the set championship card.
Yeah, just as a quick disclaimer, I made the list based on like what would have potentially the most impact on metagame in the sense of like bringing new archetype of decks, so not necessarily the strongest card bar, but like enabling new type of deck to join the metagame. So it kind of changes a bit the order of the cards in there. So yeah, honorable mention, this card, I really like the art, by the way, and it's a cool character, but the only thing where it makes not the cut for the top 5 list, I think it's the 2 willpower problem, because basically since you need to deal 2 damage to your character when you play it, you cannot play it on an empty board. It's always going to like kill itself, so you need to have something else on the board. But other than that, it's quite nice to have a Teeth Inhibition embedded into a card. It's an Inkable also, which is annoying, so I feel like this card will probably see play in Mufasa because they don't want to have a lot of action, and this could potentially help to like banish Diablo because they don't want to run the Teeth Inhibition, for example. So it's a cool utility card. Like Mufasa wants to have character that has very like strong feature when they come into play, but my concern is that if you have like a full board with one Mufasa and this comes up, it just destroys itself. So it's kind of nice, but it can also backfire. So that's why it's just on the honorable mention. But 3 lore
If you
question
have a
can be
Hydra.
dangerous.
Yes.
Yeah, if you have an Hydra, like this card needs something else on the board to be good, and
Yeah.
that's sometimes hard to do. But also in the Mufasa deck, you want this to kind of enable a better Rapunzel potentially. So this I feel like makes a lot of sense in the Ruby Amber Mufasa type of deck, but not sure for the other Ruby deck.
And
The-
we want to
The
clear
fact
it
that
up.
it's
Go
it's
ahead.
not
Go
a-
ahead. I'll clear it up
yeah.
after.
The fact that it's not a May is very, very medium
Mhm.
and unfortunate, because the first one you have to do, and then you also have to do the second one, right? So if your opponent doesn't have anything, you need to deal the other 2 damage onto one of your characters as well. So if there's nothing on board, you probably
wow.
don't want to play that, but like it makes it impossible, right? It makes it like a goat, not a goat, but a fox or a snake, right? In purple, where you just cannot play the card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, because like you were talking that you like the art, and this is the card that's going to be the promo for the set champs for set 6.
Yeah.
Which the art is very cool too, but they made a mistake on it. They put it as inkable, which
Much better now.
it would be actually. I would be considering it a lot more if it were
Mhm.
inkable, but like as an uninkable that has such a big drawback, as S4iler was saying, like it has a lot going against itself.
Yeah, for a card where there's a lot of situation where you cannot or just don't want to play it, like being an inkable would have make a lot of sense. But
The
There-
errata, the inkability might just be on the app. Like it might just be an app.
Yeah, we'll see when the card actually comes
we-
out, because it's only
we
the
don't
English
know.
version only in the app. So
Yeah.
Okay, so it
May-
might just be a online issue, but
Exactly.
May I
All right.
add also that we talked earlier about the Ember Ruby Mufasa deck. The Mufasa's legendary states that if it is banished, you reveal the top card of your deck, and if it is a character, you may put it into
Oh,
play.
that you may. You're
Yeah.
right.
okay,
Yeah, good point.
good point.
So it's
That
not
helps a lot,
necessarily
yeah.
a bummer, but the card stays stuck on the top of your deck
it's
if
still
you
a
choose not
potential
to.
whiff in your Mufasa deck, but
Yeah, it just kind of feels bad. It's the same as like revealing an action and not putting it on the bottom of your deck. So on back on top. So are we moving right along to pick number 5?
yeah, let's go. All right, so this one, like I said, we want to maybe have more archetype in the game, and location have had a hard time since it was introduced. And maybe this card could help because this is like the first tutor in the game that can be played for free, which is a big plus. Obviously it's uninkable, but singing a song that costs 3 is not that hard, and maybe you can play it with Ursula and sing it twice to get like 2 locations. So yeah, as soon as location starts to be good, and if there's one that's like key to the deck, I feel like being able to always get it, or at least increase the chance of getting it by turn 3 or 4 using this card as a tutor, would maybe like enable having good location deck that are reliable and more consistent. So
Yeah.
it's a cool card.
Yeah, because like I was thinking, like I was mentioning the Seattle DLC earlier, and there was someone that top 64 in there that
Top
was
32 actually.
top 32. Yes, I don't remember the name of the guy. I remember watching the games live of the Ember Steel location player that had like 28 locations in the deck. Maybe could shift into another color, either like shifting his steel into maybe
Ruby.
into Ruby, and like they get like crazy amount of potential of like going to get like a 2/2 drops for turn number 4 with their 3 singer or something like that. You know, it's a cool setup card, right?
We would need like a location that, or at least a set of location that can answer what your opponent is doing, because they're pretty much proactive, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And Lorcana, as we've seen, is like we have a lot of things to be proactive, but not too many things are good reactively, and that's why one of the reasons why the like the aggro decks are not that strong is that they're very bad on the draw usually if they're too proactive, right? And I feel like if we have some locations that can flip the script, we could make this card pretty good, because you can tutor for exactly what you would need at the right time.
Yeah.
If you have like a set of good locations.
Most of them are kind of too slow and they don't like put any pressure on the board. So if there was like a location that deals damage or destroy a creature, a
Yes,
character when it comes
something
into
like
play,
that.
then that would be interesting.
Yeah, or a little bit more of the Elsa's Castle, I think, from last set, that you can put a character under it and it's just tapped and doesn't ready at the start of the turn. Like stuff that's going to control a little bit more and remove a little bit of that pressure.
Yeah, because like
Also,
tutors have like generally always been quite okay in most games. Like I'm thinking about Magic a lot, and as of now in Lorcana, tutors have not been that great. Like I'm thinking about Merlin from last set that hasn't done anything. Like
I mean,
too
it was
expensive.
conditional, right? Like, no,
Yeah.
it was the shift. You needed to shift it for it to work. It's the problem.
Also,
Minnie Mouse, tutor for a character when you shift her
Yeah,
in
Yeah.
true, Minnie
Amber.
Mouse.
yeah, but I think it tutors to the top of the deck, not to the hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
That
also
too.
much
yeah.
worse.
So this one seems like the best tutor by far, but the problem is that it fetch location, and I don't know if we have strong enough location deck for it to make use. But as soon as location becomes a thing, I think this one will be a key card.
I mean, I
Well,
wonder if it might not become just like a 5th copy of Queen's Castle in Ruby Amethyst for the matchups where you actually need it. Your Fox can just sing it turn 4, you get your Queen's Castle, you play your Queen's
You
Castle.
already have
on 4.
library for that.
Yeah, that's true. There's also library already.
also
Yeah.
you have the location that we showed earlier.
The
That's
Sugar
true.
Rush.
Sugar Rush
Yeah.
Finish Line.
Yeah. Well,
You
for
can
sure.
sing with Tuk Tuk. That is a red card that will be auto included in location deck.
Yeah.
So I can see that.
and if
3-drop evasive, so such a good singer, right? Like evasive 3-drops are good singers.
because like this is kind of enables like the setup of like getting the first Sugar Rush in red that we had in the last set and the new one, and like just going one into the other. Like it seems hard because it's a lot of moving pieces, but when you have some like redundancy with this being a tutor, I think it makes it a lot better.
Yeah, and Ruby has the most card to cheat location cost, so having to like fetch the best location, even if it's expensive as like the Sugar Rush Speedway, you can still move it there for free. So yeah.
Also, the second you have like Jim Hawkins back, the problem with Jim Hawkins is if you don't find locations after that, he's kind of useless. But now, if you can always ensure that you're gonna have a location to go with your gym, like maybe it's enough. Like we'll see.
All right, we're gonna go to pick number 4 for Pat.
Yeah, and we'll see like my bottom cut were all uninkable because right now with 6 sets in, all the uninkables kind of need to fight a lot to get a slot in the deck. So I feel like those cards have more chances to get out of decks in the future also, and it's harder to put them in there. So I'll keep the inkable ones for the top. But yeah, this one's still uninkable, but very strong. I think 2 cost kind of makes it less of a problem that it's uninkable because you can just drop it in at turn 2 anyway. And it seems like with this set, Ravensburger really wants to enable like pirate and location, and this one obviously goes into a pirate deck. If you have a pirate, which is not that hard to do if you really build a pirate deck, it becomes like a 2/2 4/2 that's evasive in Quest for 2, which is very strong stats. Some deck cannot really deal with 2/2 evasive, or they need to pay like a 3 cost like Brawl to handle it. So it can start questing right away, and if there's no way to handle it, then it can kind of steal a lot of lore. Obviously, Diablo exists, so people can attune their deck to be able to destroy a 2/2 evasive, but I think this one is a very interesting one, and it could get rushed with the location, the ship from another set. So it's a cool card.
The only thing that's underwhelming to me is like the spot it takes up in the set. Like it's a rare. It takes a rare spot where in blue you have 2/2/4/2s that quest for 2,
but not
that
evasive.
Are inkable. They're not evasive. Okay, they're not evasive, but they're just like uncommons. And now you've made a smidge better rare that it's. I feel it's not enough to warrant its spot in that rarity, but you know.
But it's a pirate and a captain, so you know.
Sure. I think the types are relevant, but yeah. I feel it's a lot of like hoops to jump through to get her to be a 2/2 that quest for 2.
I can see this card big play if pirates become a thing.
Because
yeah,
Smee's Smee.
Yeah, Smee's pretty good at 2.
Yeah.
All right.
So number 3.
Yeah, Mickey Mouse.
Pirate captains.
Yeah, really, there's a lot of pirate captain, and this one seems very interesting. Like, first of all, the stats line is pretty good. Like a 4/4 doesn't die to Medusa, always a good thing. It's inkable, that's great. 2 lore, also great. It can shift, and then I look back at like all the other Mickey Mouse, and if you want to do like a pirate, usually it's gonna be Ruby Steel anyway. And there's like 2 little Mickey Mouse at 1 drop and 2 drop that could enable the shift line on this one.
From last set is actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, so it has good shift target to have it on turn 3, and then the pirates kind of want to have a lot of characters on board, and they can also all have rush. So being able to quest and then buff one of their character and takes no damage seems like a very good card to take like the board control early and maybe run from there and kind of start questing as soon as the board is clear. So yeah, this one seems like a very key card for a pirate deck. It's a beautiful art too, and I think Mickey Mouse is one of the card that has the most version of it because it's obviously like the icon of Disney. So we're gonna have a lot of shifters for the whole life of the game for sure.
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but in this case, it's actually true, I feel. Like, turn 1 Mickey, turn 2 Smee, turn 3 Shift Mickey, and Quest. Your Smee's not going to take damage from challenge, and is not going to take damage at the end of the turn. Like, that turns that Smee into quite a weapon on turn 3.
It's 5 damage!
It is 5 damage. That takes care of a Daisy pretty well.
Yeah, it's a very cool card. This one is even better than the last one, obviously, for pirate decks, and they could both see play. So,
that's bad news.
Why is that?
It's bad news for me, for my daisies.
Your precious date.
Yeah.
Going to spot number 2.
Yeah, this one. I really feel like Ravensburger is a big fan of Moana. Like they give Maui way too powerful card. Like again, if this was like a top 5 of best card, this would be the first one on the list. It's just crazy. I just don't think it's gonna impact the meta game in the sense that it's gonna enable new archetype that much because this card already fits in the deck that exists. Like you can put this in red purple to bring back a friends or bring back like a Be Prepared. And yes, you will probably be able to bring back Be Prepared because there's so many discard deck that on turn 6 you might already have a Be Prepared in the discard. So it's super strong in already existing deck, which just kind of make them better. And maybe there's going to be other like action based deck that would benefit from Maui, but I don't think you want to go with like a bunch of small action. You just want the good ones and break them back. So this is kind of like not the auto include, but almost because it's just inkable, great stat, evasive. If you can give rush to that guy, it's even crazier, and it's not that hard to give rush in red and Amethyst also. So yeah, this is a beautiful card.
Yeah, that was my only bone to pick with you when you sent us the list of like what you wanted to your order. I was like, how is this not number one? Like this feels like one of the strongest cards of the set, at least in its color. Like I was like super excited when this got released. I'm still like very mad that they didn't make an enchanted out of this one also.
Yeah, it would have been nice. So
but,
yeah,
like I feel it slots very well in like both the red decks we have as of now. Maybe not like it's not as crazy in blue red as it is in like red purple, but I feel it slots well in both of them.
I think it's better in red blue.
Really?
Yeah.
You're the expert. You're the expert. You tell me.
Taking back Vision of the Future, Sail to the Azurite Sea, How Far I'll Go, Brawl. You could get back Let It Goes. You could. There's so many things.
So you're going more. You're leaning more into like an action based deck. Like you're gonna build blue red differently if you include this, right?
Only slightly.
Yeah.
Only slightly because we were already running most of those cards.
May I add Fan the Flames to the list?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It's a first set card that allows you to ready a character that can quest, but you don't care. Maui
There's a
wants
better
to
card
challenge.
that does that now. Go to the Distance. It
true.
does the same thing, but it draws a card.
Oh, the song one.
Yep.
Yeah.
But does it ready the character?
I'm fairly certain in this. Just me just say.
So it really like enables itself, just like going.
Oh, it needs to be damaged, but
I mean,
so ready chosen damage characters of yours, they cannot quest draw a card. It costs 2 and it's a song.
I mean, given that you're going to bring it back
Same
when
thing,
you
right?
challenge a character, it's probably going to be damaged either way.
So you could do a scar effect if you do this, bring back the code to the distance, right? Play it again until your old opponent's board.
Yeah, and it's much better than Scar because you're going to gain a lot of lore by doing it also.
And you draw cards, right?
Yeah.
And draw cards.
You draw a card each time.
This card.
The problem is that
so
it's
good.
a bad card. Outside of that,
Imagine how good this card is when it can maybe put bad cards into deck. That's just how amazing it is. And the fact that all songs are action is crazy because you can gain a lot of lore by singing. Like it's hard to play a 6 song by casting their costs, but 6 actions. But if you want to sing song, then you can gain lore with it and don't play any cost, so you can do a lot of them. Like just the friends on the other side, you can start rolling them up and having cards and lore at the same time. The turn it's played.
We were talking earlier about the potential of a Return of the Green action deck. Like that can give you the
with
Mosquito Bite for 1 lore. Like Mosquito Bite is 1 ink, 1 lore.
Yeah.
That's it.
Robin Hood from last set, right?
Yep.
It was questing, mill yourself, play an action from this card, right? So there's all these synergies between those cards. But I think this card just on raw power is just enough. You don't even need to go all in on it because it's very aggressively statted, but like 7, 5, 6 costs.
Yeah.
You would think that there was like a drawback somewhere, but it's all upside everywhere.
Just like
it's
the other
evasive.
Maui.
So usually like it can take out Diablos that need to be exerted for it to work, right? And then you get your card backs from your discard, so maybe brawls from other characters, maybe whatever, and then you're gaining lore, so you have card advantage, you have lore generation, you have board control, and like what this card doesn't do, like it does everything. But so when it was first released, I thought, oh, this is broken. Why did they do that? And then they just like started releasing more things. And I understood, no, it's just that the game is getting faster. So by the time that you drop this on 6, if you don't give it rush, it could just be too late. Like it doesn't do anything when it enters play if you don't give it rush, right? So I think that's one of
it can do something if you have other characters on board and you can play it and start singing songs. But if it stays on board, it's crazy.
Also, Sarah, you're asking what the downside is. I'll tell you what the downside is. There's a little gold logo at the bottom. It's probably going to be a $50 card or something like that. If
Yeah.
it's
for at the beginning for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
$200
I think it will go
might
down.
be the downside of this card.
I think it will go down.
Yeah, it probably will.
Yeah, it always does because like people are opening the sets quite a lot for Enchanted and whatnot, and that comes back to my point. Like, why didn't they make it an Enchanted? So anyway, but then I'm like really curious to see what Pat put as number one. Because like, if this isn't number one, what is it?
Yeah. So it's
Moana.
the new Moana. Like I said, like the Ravensburger likes Moana franchise. The Mauis are great, and this Moana I feel like it has a lot of potential. Not sure yet if it's gonna be like super competitive, but this is the kind of card you want to revisit each time there's a new set coming out. Obviously, being able to move any number of cards, including herself, for free, it's something very interesting. And you get one lore because we all know that surprise lore is kind of very strong with the goat and the new green card. So this is another surprise lore that could do it by herself. But if you have a bigger board, it can do a lot of lore. And then I went back to look at like all the locations in the game to see which one would benefit from this. And there's quite a few one. Like there's a new yellow one, but you only really need to move one character there to do the features. Maybe not the best, but there's obviously the Queen Castle that's always pretty good. And if you can put a whole board in there, you're just gonna start drawing like crazy. And there's a new location in the steel that has like a feature where at the start of your turn you deal damage equals to the number of character in there and cost 2. So basically any location that has a lot of health, which makes it more consistent to play her because the location might stay on board longer for this to trigger, and that has a high cost of moving, so you benefit more from the feature, has a lot of potential with this card. And also outside of my top 5, I don't have the new 1-drop Moana, but this is another very good card that can be used as a shift target for this one, because dropping this on 5 is interesting. I remember the good old meta of set 1 where people could sometimes shift the Aladdin and sing Be Prepared on 5 that could save you games against aggro decks. So this also enables that kind of play. It's a bit expensive, but it's inkable, so I think it's still possible to play it because of that reason. And it's a pirate, so maybe.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I was looking at the types in there, and like we
So
mentioned
many types.
pirates. It kind of does what everything you wanted to do from your review here in red, because like it's locations matter and it's pirate matters.
Yeah.
So it gives, I feel it gives that kind of flexibility to location decks to not always be red yellow, but to be like red steel. Like you could have like the John Silver from set number 3 or 4, I don't remember. I think it's 3. Yeah, he just gets huge and like unkillable with like a lot of resist. You get sneeze, you get other like.
And let's not forget, you're in the Jolly Roger color that costs 1 and gives her rush when she comes in and is moved directly to the Jolly Roger. So,
yeah,
like if you have that 1-drop Jolly Roger still on board, this is a shift. Well, if you shift her, it's a shift. She already has rush. But like in the later game, it's play her, move everyone to the Jolly Roger, give her rush. I mean, a 6/5 rush for 7 is nothing to scuff at either.
It's Maui's stats.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Emerald card we discussed, which is better, obviously, like the 2-drop that can get lore based on damage. But the idea is that this card can make any location dangerous. So sometimes there was like location that doesn't do any lore, and you just leave it there because it's not a threat and anything. But when you're playing against Ruby, maybe you need to waste a lot of quester to go and challenge a location that does anything by itself, but could enable this card. So it makes harder play for your opponent, which is always good. So yeah. And Ravensburger wants to have location deck or pirate deck, and this one can do both, like a location heavy deck or a location plus pirate deck. Like it might be like the root of new archetype coming into the game, which is why it's number 1. I think it's not as good as Maui, but it can enable new deck more than Maui does. So.
I was looking at the dwarves because I wasn't sure in the dwarves' mind if it was the first time or any time you moved someone there. As if it would have been any time, that would have been a little crazy.
No, but it's once per turn.
Yeah, I think Treasure Mountain is a better location for this Moana.
The Treasure Mountain is...
That's the blue one, right?
No, it's the steel one.
Steel one.
Oh, the steel one.
Yeah, but there's a lot wrong with that. I don't remember the whole text. I remember there are a lot of problems with the text that you have to deal the damage. Necessarily, it's not a May, so you have to damage your own characters with the treasure island. So, you know, uh,
Yeah,
I'm
but it's character or location. But if your opponent doesn't have any character or location, you're probably already winning. So you can like kill one of your small guy. But I don't know. We'll see.
yeah. Anyway, so we're
At least it
moving right
has
along.
9 health, so it survives the Maui. Both Maui.
Yeah.
Unless the Maui's hook come back because now there's 8 good Mauis to put in Ruby.
We're gonna move into what I said earlier might be like the second best color of the set, and we'll let S4iler take it away with blue. Sapphire.
Yeah, I don't agree, by the way, but
You don't?
I
well,
don't either.
maybe
I
for
personally think that it's the most baity color. Like, we'll see.
all right.
Go ahead.
So this is my honorable mention. This is Nick Wild Soggy Fox. It's a 1-drop, 1/2 quest for 1. But if you have another character with support, it's a +2 strength, so it's a 3/2. So we haven't seen 3/2 much in one cost. I thought Pat would talk about the Moana 3/2, which I think she's quite good. What he mentioned it, and so this one, I don't think like it's too impactful of a card. I just wanted to talk a little bit about it because of I think we were close from having a support matter style of deck with Alice from set 2,
Yep.
and in green, in Sapphire Amber. Like an aggro deck, even like with the Scrooge from set 5, I think we were close from getting somewhere, and I think if this is a 3/2 quest for 1, this guy quests for 1 on the play every time, and it's never gonna be traded down, right? Because it's like a 1-drop and it's hard for your opponent to be having like a 4 willpower against it. And on the draw, you can always trade up, right, with it. So I think it's just like a nice 1-drop character.
Would you say it's like a better hook than the one from set 1 in Steel?
Yeah, well, more conditional, but certainly better because it can quest as opposed to the hook was always a reactive card, right?
Sure.
But also, I think blue is lacking deeply in terms of 1-drops and 2-drops. Sorry, Sapphire. So I think it's like a new, unique addition to blue.
Yeah, when you want to go outside the like 1-drop popsicle or ice block when you're in control. Yeah,
this is terrible in red blue. Like this is really bad in red blue. Like I'm not gonna play that. But
as you're saying, it might enable another version of Sapphire that's not pure control.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you're number 5.
This was actually another honorable mention, I think.
Oh, you had 2 honorable.
You had 2. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so I think this guy's a dork. I don't think he's good. But like you could theoretically like have drop it on turn 4, and it could be like a 7/7, and it could be a pretty big problem from some. The problem is that it doesn't do anything like other than being a dork. It's just a dork.
It's
like
kind of a Timmy-ish card. Like you just big to be big.
Exactly, right? So, but I think there might be something there in the future for like maybe like a strength matter deck with items. I don't know. I just put it because like he's really big.
It's kind of sad that you play him on turn 4 and he's this big guy, and then on turn 5 you start Hiramming, and just like he gets smaller and smaller as the game moves forward.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Moving to your real number 5, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Yokai, the uncommon one for drop 3/3 quest for 2. Whenever this character quests, you can get back one of your items from play, and you pay 2 less for the next one. So this has been talked like about replacing Tala's. I don't think it does because it doesn't do anything when it enters the play. And then Tala had the advantage of being able to do something after having drawn already. So the body was like disposable. You could trade with it, sing a song with it. Whereas this needs to survive a turn, and then you need to quest, so you don't do anything with the body itself. And then it does things. But the thing it does is pretty powerful because it can get back popsicles and Vitalisphere, and then you pay 2 less maybe for your workshop, play back the play back the Popsicle or the Vitalisphere. So I think it's an enabler in some style of item decks, and quite a good one.
Like,
and prior to that, we only had the Queen in set 4.
yeah.
The 3/3 for 3 that quest for 1, and I had a really good activated ability. And I think this is like something close to that. And the problem with the 3-drop is that we were not running 2 cost ramp. Now, since this is a 4-drop, we're incentivized to play turn 2 ramp into this, and so we're more into the late game. My problem with it, of course, is that it doesn't interact with the board, so it's a very dirty card. And I don't think the big yokai is good at all. Like, it's way too costly. It interacts with microbots, which I think they're not good. So they I think they missed the mark on the item things outside of like a few cards. But I think this is one of them that I would love to like keep an eye on for future sets, because if there's like item shenanigans, this guy could be like a relatively good enabler.
Like, I'll be honest, personally, I'm really hyped about this card from a budget player perspective. Like,
Yes,
in competitive, I don't see it making a lot of waves. But from a budget perspective, this is Hiram at home. It enables a lot of what blue is doing in the bigger decks in a smaller fashion, where you just return your Popsicle, play your Popsicle for free, draw a card whenever you quest. So it kind of gives you that Hiram vibe. It's not as good, but I'm happy to see that kind of pattern arriving in a lower powered version of the Lorcana metagame.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I believe that there's something to do with this, and it's not necessarily now. It could be like maybe next set or in the future, but there's something with this card. It enables some shenanigans like returning a Popsicle to your hand to put into play a 5, 6, or 7 cost item.
Yeah.
Like Steel Chromicon, the Lucky Dime. I can see something there.
I mean, one of the things I'm curious to try with him is the Aerials from set 1 combo.
Yeah.
Where like
Absolutely.
you can
Aerial Storm,
because like you can Eye of the Fates, your Aerial, quest with yokai, bring back the Eye of the Fate, play back the Eye of the Fate,
We'll talk about
the Aerial, buff the Aerial. Like there's fun shenanigans.
We'll talk about that soon.
Oh, cool.
all right. So number 4 then.
All right, Tadashi Yamada. So this one is a really interesting card. It's another card that I don't think fits in anything that we currently already have. It's a 3-cost uninkable 2/2 quest for 2. And during an opponent's turn, if this is banished, and it's quest for 2, right? So it kind of like incentivizes the opponents to banish it some way. You put the top card of your deck into your Inkwell, but you also put this card into your Inkwell. So you double ramp. Of course, the downside is that you don't decide when. Right, and so in control decks, it's bad. But I think it's a very powerful, aggressive cards if you and that can enable you from not inking from your hand after it's been dealt. Like, right, you can play low to the ground cards and keep your 5 or 6 drops in hand, and eventually they'll need to deal with this, and then you'll be able to drop your 5 or 6 drop. And so I think in an aggressive shell, this could be really, really powerful. Like, this could be like a 2 or 3 for 1, right? It's very, very a good potential, but I don't see it in a control shell.
And it's interesting that it's a mix of set 1's Tala and Mickey Mouse. Like, you're gonna get both effects. It's not when it enters, but you still get the extra 2. So no,
It's big ramp.
Yeah. It's big ramp and an aggro-ish card, so
it's kind of a weird mix.
Yeah, that's like the weird mixture of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So going to number 3.
All right, now we're start talking because these other cards I don't think they're gonna see play, right? Like, unless like there's a really new archetype. I think Alice Savvy Sailor is a very dangerous card, right? It's cost 3. Uninkable quest for 2/1/4. It has Ward, which is really problematic mechanic, right, in general, as we've seen with Prince John and Bucky. So whenever this quest, another chosen character of yours gains +1 lore and ward. What about this Ariel you were talking about, Nick?
Yeah.
So now you can play items and quest for 2, and if you have Eyes of the Fate, you quest for 3. You have Metal of Metal that gives +2 lore.
Yeah.
You could have like a 5 lore and a 5 lore ward Ariel and like popping with a storm item deck, right? So I think she enables those type of like really niche strategies. But also just in general, in like maybe like even the hero deck, right? She's a hero, and so the hero in blue with the Ana from set 4, I think. That was questing for 2, or like a 2-drop 1/4 quest for 2, something like that. If you have another hero, so you could run an aggressive deck, possibly even with Tiana, right, where you're covered in terms of like having your characters not being able to be challenged with Tiana, but also not being able to be targeted with Alice, right? So you can kind of checkmate your things, and then you still have to figure out how to deal with Be Prepared, but and Big Sisu. But I think there's something there. Like, it's really promising card, and I kind of don't like the design though, because of the cheap ward characters for me are really dangerous. And
well, they've made a lot of these like since the beginning of the game, and they've always been like too good for their own good. I want to say we have the example of Bucky, right? And then you have like the John. You have a lot of ward things, like even the muses even the muses that are warded, like they're on the bigger side of like the ward spectrum that is playable right now. It's so pesky to deal with.
But all these cards had something in common, which is that their feature doesn't need them to be exerted to work, like the Bucky, the Prince John, and so this one does. I think it's much less worse, but it's super cool that it gives ward, because it might surely enable Ariel, which was the problem of that card, like the Storm Ariel deck, because it always needs to survive one turn, which never happens. But this comes down on turn 3, and then you can technically drop the Ariel on turn 4 and give its ward, so we can start questing on turn 5 with a bunch of popsicles. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Very curious.
Right, on to number 2.
Number 2.
Okay, so this was one of the most hyped cards. It's the first reveal we had for set 6 in the D23 box. This is Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. It's a 2/1 quest for 2, and an uninkable at 2 costs. And whenever you put something in the ink, well, you reveal the top of your deck, and then if it's an item, you play it for free, exerted. So obviously a very powerful effect. If you happen to be lucky enough, or you set it up with maybe Aurora from set 4, where you could exert your items and look at the top card, right, and basically put it at the bottom, or save it on top if it's an item, and then ink. And so it's kind of like a bit of a setup. And but the payoff could be quite good, of course, if you can drop a lucky dime early. I think people are overvaluing that, because a lot of the time your lucky dime is not going to be really be able to be activated, even if you have it early, right? Like, it scales, dime scales really well by the time you can play it and when it's relevant. So even if it was costing, well, the problem if it would be costing 2 is that you could play it on turn like 6, 7, or 8, and do another, and then do a Tamato on the same turn, right? That would be problematic. But I don't think like cheating dime on turn 3 or 4 or 5 is not that strong. But I think if you have like a very dedicated item deck, like I'm thinking this is like a blue steel card, where you put Maurice Workshop. And then every time you ink, you potentially have like a popsicle that draws a card for free. But if you have the workshop, you draw another card, right? So it keeps on going. So it's very strong. And one of the things that can be also oversight is that this guy quests for 2. Like, it's like, if your opponent doesn't put anything in play and it's kind of slow deck, you're gonna get card advantage and you're gonna get lore. So it kind of like does both.
I feel like it kind of comes to fill one of the gaps we were saying with the Nick, like early characters for blue which they're
Yeah.
generally are not that good at doing anything. This one like has a bonkers effect. It quests for a lot. It's just like generally very, very exciting.
Yeah, it has the same problem that Chicha had last set though, is that it's uninkable, and those decks runs a lot of uninkables already, and they're proactive cards, and it's hard for you to dedicate uninkable slots to those kind of cards. So I think it's good, but I think it's a little bit overrated.
Okay.
Like it also eats everything Diablo 8, right? So it was a problem with Chicha. I think it will be the same problem for Oswald. But I think in the future it could also open up some nice synergies with other future items. Like we don't have anything as strong as Dime right now, but there could be way better items than Dime, right?
Yeah, I feel like this one can be played on turn 2 and be good, but it's probably even better in the late game where you have a bunch of Fishbone Quill ready for it. So it's good.
I mean, it can build you up also at the beginning. I think it's quite strong on 2 because like you play this plus you ink, and either you play Fishbone or you get it from the top, right? And then you keep on going. And so it can set up your old board of items. And the problem with items is that you pay ink to not interact with the board a lot of the time. But here, if you don't have to pay the ink for them, you can interact with the board while you are developing your items. So
the fact that the ability works even if it's not exerted is very key here. It's good.
Yeah.
The whole game long thing.
Yeah.
And then we want to see your top pick. A common.
Sailor to the Azurite Sea. So my friend Artabax in this podcast, he said, "How is this not made exactly for you, man? Like this is the most Sailor card we've ever seen. It even has Sail on it. So this is like 2-cost inkable action." And it's basically Explore from Magic if people have been following that card game. And you can put an additional card from your end into your Inkwell face down. Not exerted. Like you can play it and still use it and draw a card. And you don't have to do it immediately, right? You can draw your card and then do other things or whatever. And then eventually you can ink one more that turn, basically. It's like Bell and not like Fishbone or Tipo where... It can be an uninkable. This one needs to be inkable, right? So that's one of the downside for it. I think the decks that run it will need to lower the uninkable count because if you play this on 2 and then your only inkable is Hiram, it's a disaster, right? So you really don't want to be in that position. Whereas the Tipo or the fish or the one jump ahead. Didn't have that problem, right? Yeah. Because people could ink an uninkable from your hand, and of course the one jump ahead would taking a card from the top of your deck.
It's also an action and not a song compared to one jump. So
yes, which I think is an upgrade because of the 2-drop Ursula. A lot of the time you would be like not wanting to keep the one jump ahead on the draw versus Emerald. Here you don't care anymore. You play Tipo and you play this, and I don't think you play one jump ahead anymore. At least in Red Blue, I think in. Sorry, I keep saying Red Blue, Ruby Sapphire.
Fine, we call it Red Blue all the time.
Yeah. In the Sapphire Emerald, I think one jump ahead could still be played because that deck usually plays the Muses, and so maybe that Ursula will activate the Muses as where this won't. But I want to highlight some of the strong opening that this card opens, and it's incredible. Like I think it's the best card of the set, along with Gogo Tamago. I just think the other blue cards are kind of medium to too bad, but this card is incredible. So turn 2, you can play this, draw a card, ink again, and play a popsicle, draw a card, right? So you keep on going, like you see a lot of your deck, and you are able to do something else then ramp on 2. So at one point, if we get a good 1-drop, we could even play this plus a 1-drop on turn 2, right? And so impact the board. Or maybe we get like a 1-cost removal. Maybe someday, right? Like that would be incredible as well. And turn 3, if you're able to turn 2 ramp and then you do it again on turn 3 with Sail. So maybe you play Tipo on turn 2, right? Turn 3, you play Sail. Now you have 5 ink that you can play 3, right? You play this plus 3 that are unexerted. So you could play Sail plus Brawl on turn 3 and still have 6 ink up on turn 4. So you are ramping plus impacting the board. Whereas before, you would need to, if you would want to do that, you would need to play Quill or Half-Wall, go on turn 3 after having ramped on 2, so that you can get to 6 on turn 4, which is quite, of course, very good because of Medusa, and now because of the big Maui.
Exactly what I was gonna say. I was like, so you say that you're getting 6 ink on turn 4, maybe conspicuously playing the Maui to buy this deck and to go infinite.
Well, not go infinite because you still need to,
Yeah.
of course, challenge characters with Maui to get back to it. But let's say you do that, right? Like Tipo, Sail, Brawl, Maui, and then you have a Maui that can take back a Sail and a Brawl, or a Brawl, right?
It's crazy. Like it's a crazy like palette of tools that you have. Like it gives a very toolboxy aspect to your blue-red deck, which
Yeah.
seemed like very like super good in a deck that was already very very good, and you can attest from it. Like you've been playing blue-red for a while now.
Yeah, since set
In a show
2,
like
but
that,
mostly set 3.
Yeah.
in a show like that, do you ever see a world where, like, you might slot back in one Dragonfire because Maui can take it back, and because you're getting so far ahead on
It's an uninkable.
sure.
it is
For
like,
sure,
it-
but I think Let It Go is just better because it's
true,
inkable.
true.
You know, in that deck, right? Like maybe in Ruby or Emerald,
Yeah,
with like
but
Robin
no,
Hood.
you're right. Like, Let It Go is arguably a lot better.
And it's a song.
Yeah.
And it's it's a song. It's inkable.
Yeah, so it can be sang with Maui as well, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that. And also, if I want to talk about other, like even with Chicha that I was talking about earlier, like you now before you would need to play Chicha on 2 and then Quill on 3 or Tipo whatever to get use of it, and so you would get a window of it to be dealt with. But now you can play a turn 2 ramp, and then you can play Chicha plus Sail, right? And so you have way more options of being able to get the card off of your Chicha right away. And I'm already talking about red blue, but then it's going to be good in Sapphire Emerald also, and it could open up other possibilities, right? Like it's a very 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 strong card, and we cannot oversay it. Like it's definitely one of the best cards in the game.
I'd put it in my top 5 of the whole set, not only of the color, but like of the whole set.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned a very important point where you get to draw the card before you decide to ink, if you want to ink, which is not like mandatory, it's a may. So basically when you have like 4 ink, you can play this and then find the Chicha, play Chicha and then ink again, so it triggers her anyway. It's quite nice.
Yeah, like I wanted to touch upon like how this card is, you said it was explored from Magic. Like in the environment of Lorcana, it's so much better because you have a lot more cards that are potentially resources instead of like being dedicated lands or like dedicated resources. So I feel this card is just like tremendously powerful because of that.
Yeah. Like in Explore deck, you would need to play 25 and up lands, right? You are playing more than 25 inkables anyway, right?
Like
so like it's going to work so much better. Yeah. The other thing I didn't say about it is that it makes also so the reason in set 5 I was running 6 of those effects, right? 4 Tipo, 2 1 jump aheads, because at some points there was a diminishing returns in terms of mathematics. Like the more you run, it doesn't get your percentages all that high, right? Like the 7th one is always going to be worse than the 6th, then the 5th, then the 4th, etc. Right? So at some points you need to say, okay, well, I'm like on turn 2, I have 80% chance of finding it if I have like 7, let's say. So I'm good with that. I'm not going to run like 8. But now that we have Sail, the problem with running too many of those is, of course, later stage of the game, those were bad cards, right? But now, at later stage of the game, you just cycle it off. Like, you don't need to use the first ability. You just draw a card, spend 2.
Is not a bad rate.
You spend 2, cycle a card, is, as we know, Magic players, like, that's a totally fine rate. Like, just to, like, make sure that the card on the top of your deck is not dead.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, no, I cannot sing enough the praise of this card. I love it too.
Yeah.
Like, might bring me back to blue for this set. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, and there's a bunch of new cards that wants to play a lot of action, even old cards. So this one is an action and it replaces itself. So it's kind of like a popsicle. You want to keep going with those kind of action that draws and maybe generate lore or something like that.
Yeah.
All right, so we're coming to the last color that I will be presenting. The one, the thing I've been heralding since set one. For those who know me, so we're going into steel. With my honorable mention is Mr. Big Shrewd Tycoon. So why I put it as my honorable mention is I feel like it's the effect is interesting that it cannot be challenged by things that have more than 2 strength, and that it's so aggressive by being three lore pips. The thing is, it's really bad against itself. I want to say against other steel cards, just for the fact that steel has been time and time again one of the best colors in the game. It's always been like a pivotal point of the meta game. So it's this card is just like playing bad against other steel cards, but it's really interesting against other stuff that might never be able to bump into it. Like, this is really interesting against like red purple, let's say.
Yes.
So like they have to find their brawl to deal with it, or like if they get to B prep, you're super happy about it. So, you know, this is why I say it's interesting. I just think it attacks an angle of the metagame that is probably too narrow for it to be
Yes.
actually playable.
I
Especially
agree.
since steel is not a known aggressive color.
Yeah.
It can be.
It's
Yeah,
so
but-
it's very versatile. That's what I have to say
Yeah.
about it.
Yes.
I believe
So then at number 5.
Oh, Clara had something to
Oh,
say.
yeah.
about it.
Sorry.
Yeah, I believe
Didn't
in
hear you.
very limited niche, this card can be great, such as pre-release, sealed, draft.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
If you're
that's true.
picking that up in a pre-release, like
It's
event,
never gonna
in a
die.
sale, like that's a pack one, pick one for sure. Like,
Oh, that's true. Like, we don't run one power character in drafts mostly, right?
No.
yeah.
This is bad against Hiram too.
Sure, Hiram the aggressor.
Yeah, it's bad
Power
against the
channel.
ice block. You can decrease your will, your strength
Oh,
to
that's
attack
true,
it.
true.
People are gonna want him to be 2 strength now.
Okay, so I'm gonna ice block my own creatures to be able to bump into it.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Moving right along to my number 5. It's one of the legendaries, the first legendary of the set. It's the John Silver, the 8 cost, shift 5. That's resist +2. It's a 6/6. And what it does really interestingly is attack those ward characters. Because we said that the best ward characters are the ones that are going to stay ready, that are not going to be exerted. So this puts some kind of pressure onto it. It's late pressure for sure. If not, it would have been like very, very good to just be able to pressure turn after turn your opponent. Why is it so low on my list? It's also because I feel it's kind of a Cinderella variant. And people know I love my Cinderellas, and I feel it's still, the effect is so unique that it's still the best like big finisher. It's also 3 lore pips instead of this one that is 2. But I feel it's an interesting tool if the meta comes to be very warped around those ward characters. You have a way to kind of mitigate that with your John Silver, especially if like there's a pirates deck. We were talking about like the other John that interacts with location. There's another John from set 1 that's a green one. It's not like a super good rate on it, let's say, because the other one is a 6-drop, but it was also a legendary that was doing quite a lot. So I see potential in this card, but I'm kind of not too high on it just because it kind of takes the same spot as Cinderella and also Archer from the last set that was kind of trying to give stats to other things that kind of shares the same spot.
Yeah, but I mean, from a play pattern perspective, let's say you shift him on 5, and then turn 6, he applies. You play a big tank. You've already done 2 to everything, and then maybe you can even sing a grab. And like we're in Disneyland right now, like fire on if everything goes well. But him plus Think is just turn 6/2 damage to everything that's ward, which is
Build your own grab.
most of the stuff on the board at that point, and you still have like him as a 2 quester 6/6 to.
No, it's still a clock. It's still a clock, but you would expect that from your 8-drop.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so I think it's not as powerful as Cinderella. I agree with you. And the only thing that's going for it, I think, is that it dodges every challenge. Like nothing in the game that is played, at least, right? Like can challenge it in one shot.
Yeah.
As opposed to Cinderella, she can be taken out by this new Maui or by Maleficent Monsters Dragon. This survives both, right? So it's incredibly beefy, but I think it's too slow. And like Green as Bruno to deal with this.
I will
I don't
say
know.
though,
It's a bit of a dork.
it's a bit of a dork. I could see him in like a really aggro heavy meta where like if you stabilize by turn 5 and put him down, aggro's never putting anything down that's gonna stick after that. Like they're not gonna put their Lilos or Pinocchios or whatever. Like
that was already true for like
that's
most of the steel cards.
That's the thing. Like Steel's already good at that. It's not.
That's why it's kind of low. Like I have to say I'm quite low on the steel cards from the set. I was kind of like struggling going through my low end of the list. Like I'm quite high with what I've put in on the spot number 1 and spot number 2, but I was kind of scrounging at that point, and I said like, oh, it's just like raw power. I'm just gonna include it in there.
Well, let's get closer to that.
I think just one thing to say about this one. I think there's a big difference between this and Cinderella, where Cinderella is good against like one single target, and this is good against wide board. And potentially this would see play more in Emerald Steel, where you run the card that wants other characters to be damaged, because obviously every new character that comes into the play are always like full health and they kind of don't have any damage. So if you want to trigger a very big Robin Hood that would quest for a lot, or even maybe the Elga could finish stuff because she deals like 3 damage when she quests to a damage character, or the Cheshire Cat destroy anything. So I think that one single damage in those Emerald card could really enable a lot of stuff. Even the Pack Tactic, I think, it's a very funky card. Maybe we'll see.
It looks like a mid-range budget, not budget because it's legendary. But
what if the set 1 base comes back because it exerts all of them? We'll see. But the discount is great. There's not a lot of cards that the shift costs 3 less than the actual cost, so that's a cool thing. There's not a lot of John Silver in the game, but a 3 cost discount is great.
Yeah, no, it's quite big and it's impactful. I see my colleague trying to see something about Steal from the Rich from set 1, but it doesn't work the way you want it.
I thought it was like losing lore for each damage character, but that's not what it does.
No.
All right.
So getting closer to my top end, we were saying I was more confident about it. So I choose in number 4. I have the Captain Amelia. I call her Cogsworth at home. It's a Cogsworth effect where you're not required to play blue. I just find her a bit awkward. Like she's not like she's 1 less strength, 1 less willpower than Cogsworth. She's only 4 costed. She still quests for 2. Will give resist to your character when they are being challenged, not at all time. And instead of being ward, she cannot be challenged by pirates, which is like obviously much worse. But yeah, I just call her Cogsworth at home. Maybe people will find application if like there's a pirate deck we were talking about it. Like this would be a good counter, and like she's a captain for Smee.
She's an alien.
Yeah, she has stuff going for her, but like not enough to be exciting enough for me.
Yeah, the thing with Smee is it blocked the steel decks pretty hard by being ward and by being resist all the time.
Cogsworth, you mean?
Cogsworth, yeah.
Yeah.
And Amelia does neither of those, so like it's a harder sell for me, but I can see her.
She's a steel Cogsworth that's bad against steel.
Yeah.
Cool.
And she's also bad against Ruby, right?
Also.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
fact that she doesn't get its own resist while being challenged is pretty bad. She's just gonna get Fox and that's it. It's done.
Yeah, so like like I said, I was still quite low on this card. It was just worth mentioning because it's
Yeah.
Cogsworth adjacent, which was such a bonkers card.
Yeah.
All right, next up for number 3, I have Jafar, the power hungry vizier. So this I feel is a blue steel card if they want to include it. It's a weird spot because of how it's costed and of what it does, and it's not questing for a whole lot. But I feel it's a really good like board management card. Like if you're able to ink a few times in the turn, you're gonna take down a lot of dudes. So I think it's just interesting. This is kind of my limit of like, I think this might be playable, but you'll have to convince me. Also, like the body is not that great. It's still 3/4. It's gonna get Medusa. It's gonna get like everything under the sun. But I feel that it might be some kind of addition to Blue Steel if Blue Steel was to come back for set number 6.
So that brings us to your number 2.
Yeah, I don't know if people want to say something about the Jafar, but like
I think there's a better blue steel card coming up.
yeah, you know what's up. Well, the next 2 cards. So this one I'm actually excited about. The Calhoun, she's great. She's a great aggressive card. She is a 3/2 for 2. It's uninkable. I don't care. It's resist 1. It's gonna take out 1 or 2 guys. She's gonna gain you a lot of lore. She's not gonna get taken out by most steel removal. Like you cannot let the Storm Rage on this thing quite easily. I just really love this card as a more aggressive bottom end to steel decks. I'm really sold about it because you're just gonna like take out guys from the from your opponent as well as gain lore at a very good rate. So I just love it in general.
Insane card. I think it's so good. It's like Robin Hood on 2.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Exactly.
And we were talking earlier in Amethyst about how the new Diablo is like a no downside 1-drop. Yeah, that kind of makes it a bit of a downside.
Exactly.
Like, that's a good answer to it.
Yeah, we all know how strong 3/3s are for 2 costs, and this is even better than 3/3. Like 3/2 with resist is much better, and we know the Madame Mim has been strong, but there's a caveat of being needed to bounce. This one doesn't, and then there's Smee that can damage itself. Like this one just outside of the uninkability, which doesn't really matter because it costs 2 and you want to play it on 2. It's very strong.
Yeah. And what about with Hidden Cove, right? Like a 4/3 resist 1 is just a house.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's
absolute house.
It has so much going for itself that, like, the card that I put in number 1 is that much better. Like I said, I was excited by my 2 first picks, and like I want to show the next one because I'm really.
This is my number 1.
I have something to say about this one too.
Yeah.
There's a discussion about uninkables, and I believe that uninkables shape your lines of play during your games. So if Calhoun is a card that you want to play like every time on turn 2 or as soon as possible, you want to have 4 of that card, and you want to play them instead of any other cards at 2. So at this point, it's making a choice of what you want to play, what you want to see at certain cost.
It's a very deck building restriction, and I agree with you, Clara.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like you know that you're gonna be a deck that's really geared towards challenging if you're making the choice to have this as your 2-drop, because you're probably always gonna want to be playing this on 2, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think people will need to be considering if Smee is still their 2-drop of choice. It, of course, could be played with both. Like you could play both, but I think it really fights into the same spot. But being on an uninkable is not as free to run as the Smee is.
No, for sure. I just think it does the work differently. Like the Smee's just gonna quest away, and probably you're gonna use it as like a meat bag for Rapunzel, or just you're gonna try and mitigate his downside with a captain or whatnot. As this, you're just gonna want to be ramming her into guys. So you're denying board to your opponent instead of just like them having to respond to your Smee that's gaining your lore, you know?
I mean, I think on the draw versus aggro, every time they're gonna see it, they're gonna like lose their mind. They're like, oh no, what the
Yeah.
heck? Like, it's so good against aggro. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Like it's steel, right? So it's kind of on brand, but like it.
You're so
The-
right.
The fact the fact that she does more lore by challenging than questing makes it that maybe the opponent doesn't want to exert their character too much, but then
Yes.
the cards that enables character to attack ready character then could be interesting. I don't know if we're gonna see One Last Hope at one time. It's a pretty bad card, but maybe this could help. We'll see.
Yeah, like even like Anna, like the effects from Anna being able to like add +2 to her character, like this deals 5, resist 1, like, ooh, like
I mean,
this guy
that's
is-
value. She's a good target for any Teeth and Ambition adjacent effect, as she's only going to take one.
And if you put this in Amethyst still, you have a lot of way to exert opponent character if they don't do it by themselves. So
Also, in Amethyst, you might bounce her and like buy her back and like indirectly heal her. You know,
Yeah.
You have a lot of play to the card. That's why I love it. But like, I was really excited by the next one. Like, we've been hyping it up. It's the Wreck-It Ralph, the legendary 1/4/4 that reads: whenever this character quests, you may banish chosen item or location to gain 2 lore, and it quests for 3. So, like you said it, Sailor, it's a very good blue steel card for sure. Like it does wonders with Lucky Diamond, just probably gonna one shot people out of the blue. Also, that you can ramp into it, like, and have this huge presence on board really early. I feel it's also good in in other archetypes that play steel, just because you have a really aggressive way to deal with pesky game items. Like when I say game items, I mean items and locations. Like just putting that much pressure of like gaining 5 every time you deal with something from your opponent is just bonkers to me.
Yeah, removing a Queen's Castle, removing that Lucky Dime, or that Hiram target.
even a fishbone quill,
Yeah,
even
exactly.
a popsicle, like
Yeah.
anything.
So yeah, I'm just like excited about this card. Also, like they made an enchanted out of it. I'm really happy about that. So like I really want to try this card, but obviously the first shell you're gonna see it in is blue steel. Like I said, with Lucky Diamond is just an insane thing where you could just like activate the dime, gain 3, quest it for 3, pop your own dime if you need to gain 2 turtle lore. That's 8 right there. It's just like good game.
I mean, I've seen Ember decks running 0 to hero recently to bring out like the Cinderella early or stuff like that. You know, maybe you can see that Wreck-It Ralph on turn 3 or something. Just boom.
Yeah, because the effect is really good, but it's still a 3 quester also. Even if it doesn't have food to trigger its effect, it's not bad. You're actively winning the game very, very fast with it.
And it's a
I think it's medium if you don't have items by yourself.
I understand, but like I said, if after like 2 or 3 turns you don't have food anymore, you're still winning the game pretty hard.
Yeah. The where I think it's really good also is that a lot of the time when you're trying to deal with locations, you need to make the decision of like, okay, who's winning the race, right? Because I'm gonna need to not quest for maybe 4 or 5 in order to deal with your location. This is like, no, I'm questing for 5. You don't have locations anymore. It didn't cost me any tempo at all.
Yeah, no, I think it's just a great card to be answering potential meta threats. Well, we already had Queen Castles in the metagame. We had stuff. We had we mentioned the deck, the Ember Steel location deck. This is eating good out of these decks.
Uh,
I mean,
might
I
even
think
be a finisher.
if Blue Steel is tier 1 or maybe like even tier 2, which I think it will, I don't see how a location that can make it into
No.
al-
out of this.
also, Ruby Sapphire, if it is still in the top tier, like Wreck-It Ralph, you want to have it to burst a Lucky Dime, Fishbone Quill, or whatever.
Yeah.
Also, it is a 4/4. So
Yeah.
Ruby Sapphire
That's just Medusa.
cannot get Medusa easily. Like, it's not like I
Yeah,
have
it
this card I
needs
can
ice
play.
block. It needs like
You need
it
the
lives
ice
in that
block.
sweet spot of it
Having
doesn't
to
get
work.
it doesn't get Medusa, it doesn't get Sisu'd, but it also doesn't get World's Greatest at
Greatest.
5 or
Minnie
Minnie
Mouse.
Mouse at 5. Like it dodges that
Yeah,
Ember
4/4 stat line is good.
threshold and the Sapphire Ruby threshold. So it's an interesting spot to live in.
It might be a bit early to like. I'm segueing to probably the end. I don't know if people have other things to say about the Wreck-It Ralph. I think we've sung its praise enough.
Yeah, I can maybe add that like this is probably one of the biggest effect for character quests. So I was looking at the collection of all the cards in the game. There's only two that can ready it and makes it quest again, which is Pyros and the new green card you came back. And this is probably the best target for those cards that are probably not so great. But if you can do it with this one, like it's at 10 lore and it's just crazy. The green one is an action, so it's kind of hard to see it coming. And then Pyros is kind of bad because you need to banish someone with it. But yeah, this is one of the card you want to ready and quest twice with.
People were running Pyros in Blue Steel.
Yeah, at least it's still already. So
yeah. So like some people were choosing to play Pyros just to have those cute lines going on. I remember playing against that in Toronto back in set 4, like at the butt end of set 4, and it's still like impressive. So
it's uninkable, so there's that.
Yeah.
Like, at least they put it uninkable.
Yeah, that's the main thing going against it if you want to, but like I'm still very, very high on that card. So it might be like a little early to talk about like actual metagame shape, but I'm pretty sure, like, I know S4iler has been preparing for some tournaments recently, so I don't know if you guys have like an idea of where the metagame might be going with the new set. Is it gonna be like, is it gonna change a lot? Are we gonna have like a lot of new archetypes? Are we gonna see more of the same and just like adding on to what we already had? Like, I want to hear you guys like where the game is going metagame wise.
I have answers, but if my co-host, if my people
do you want
to talk,
maybe talk last, just because you have like I feel you have the most opinions.
Yeah.
So we can start with like Patrick.
Yeah, I haven't looked at all the cards and tried to theorycraft yet, but what I would expect from like the first few weeks of release is crazy deck that doesn't work really well, and then the old deck that just have like few cards switch in that are just better now, like adding the new Maui into any red deck could just boost the power and the strength level of that deck. So I would expect a lot of the whole deck to still be good and just a little better. And then for the new archetype, I think it's going to take a few weeks to get into, and then it's going to be interesting where the meta will shift. But yeah, that's my expectation, especially since we don't have the online Pixelborn anymore, like the digital version. That kind of slows the process of figuring out the best deck quickly. So it's gonna take time, but I would expect that this might be the set that brings a new color pairing or just a new archetype. So it's gonna be interesting.
Sarah?
I believe I'm in the same camp also, but I believe that just give it like a week or two. Like, I consider myself to be a mad scientist in terms of brewing decks, and I have a couple of ideas in my bag that I will probably explore on my own Twitch when I have the time.
No spoilers, and also you'll give us the your Twitch handle so we can link it in the bio.
Yeah, definitely. So, my take on this is there's probably new archetypes we've talked about in in this show tonight. And new cards that open new possibilities. My prediction is location will get a boost in one way, one form or another. I believe that action that was a much more pushed on the side, a theme will be brought back. So those are two of my predictions. In terms of color pairing, I'd say Amber Sapphire will emerge.
Okay.
Sapphire Emerald will transform.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the other remaining colors as we know them, they will still remain. They will evolve a little bit, but not so much.
All right. I mean, I know I'll be trying, as we're talking about mad scientists, to make some form of Jafar deck work with what we have there. Like, there's been more and more support over that coming into the game. We have Finders Keepers, we have the Genie. Like, they're all Aladdin teams too. It kind of seems like there's
Thematic.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're trying to push us in that direction, but I'll definitely try to see what can be done. But no, definitely trying to see, like, will aggro finally be viable competitively, and will we be able to break Jafar in the end? So that's where I'm trying to go. But as long as this card is as strong as it is now, and with the new tools it's got, I'm really not holding my breath that apart from answering this card, we're going to see anything too crazy and new coming out. Sadly.
Should we mention what we want to see? Maybe another question.
Yeah,
not that's going to be good, but what we want to be good.
Yeah, well, if you want to tell me about it, like,
Yeah.
please do. But just before
Yeah,
we
let's
do
see
that, because like
S4iler.
we were talking about metagame, and I don't want to segue too much out of it. I want to hear what S4iler has to say about what he thinks, because I think he's been preparing more than we have. Because I've been playing like a lot of Magic in the past week, so
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna be diving back into Lorcana like next week.
Yeah, I've been sleepless. I have been thinking about it for since 2 weeks, basically, when we got all the spoilers. So Go Tamago is insane. Green still gets better, which is kind of insane to think about. It needs to shift a little bit of what it does, because I think it has like an aggro potential that it didn't have before, or because of it. I think the Muses is going to be incredible because everybody wants to get faster, and the Muses is just one of the best cards at stopping all of that. And it also Ricker is one of the most aggressive cards in the form of Coco Tamago. So I think like Muses, Gogo Tamago are gonna push green over like even better. I think there's new tools for a new control deck in terms in the color of Emerald and Sapphire, and I think we haven't talked too much about it in the Emerald review. But there's like many cards that are really promising. Like you came back, bend to my will. You guys were not high on it, but I think it's a very, very promising card. And people think that it doesn't fit nicely with Clarabelle, but I think it fits really nicely into Clarabelle if you play Clarabelle first. It also have the new Peter Pan, which says that if you cannot gain lore unless it's challenged, right?
Yeah.
So this is a really new control card. So I think green is just getting everything right now.
Yeah.
Like green, and not necessarily like green steel is getting a little bit better, yes. But I think like green Sapphire, like Emerald Sapphire, Emerald Ruby, like all the other fringe Emerald decks can now possibly exist. Maybe not tier 1, but there's definitely like potential for these decks to exist. But I think competitively, everything will be overshadowed by the fact that Muses will and Steel in general will keep aggro in check still. I don't think aggro didn't get much, like and Steel got some really cool tools. I was like Kaloon, and we didn't talk about two of the most powerful songs from the sets, which is Ella Oops and Woofles. I always say
Heffalumps
that
and
word.
Woozles.
Yeah, thank you. So that makes it's a 2-cost inkable song in Emerald that says what is it said? Choosing a opposing character can quest and you draw a card. So this with Ursula and the Muses, right, is really good at just stopping aggro in their tracks right away. The one in Steel, which is I'm Still Here, is also very, very good because it can gives your Kaloon now resist 3, draw a card. You can double sing it with Ursula. It can save your Diablo from another Diablo and kill their Diablo, right? Like it's so I think there's like a lot of good new songs for the Muses as well. So yeah, that's where I'm leaning towards right now, and I think Blue Sapphire, Ruby Sapphire got like 2 of the best cards in the set, but they don't have new answers, and the answers are more broad and different, and they're more diversified. So it's going to be really hard to build your decks to try to answer everything, right?
Yeah.
Like there's locations, there's like immediate lore, there's like Wreck-It Ralph that can wreck your things while gaining lore, and like so there's so many different things, and instant gaining lore and burn, as we call it, right? Like in MTG verbs, verbial, and yeah, I think it's gonna be hard for control decks to keep up.
Right. So then I'm gonna come back to what Patrick was saying. Like, I want to hear like one card from each one of you that you want to be working. Like it's probably not like a banger that we've mentioned or whatnot, but you saw it and you're like, I want this to be good. Patrick, you can take it away.
I was thinking more about colors and stuff that I would like
go
to
ahead.
see.
Oh,
but-
go ahead. Go.
Yeah,
Do,
and it's
do it
interest-
however. Yeah, maybe I
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah, because I haven't looked at all the cards, but it's interesting what S4iler mentioned because I think it kind of fits what I wanted to see a lot, and I did try in the past was to make a Emerald Steel that's not based on this card. I'm not a fan of playing against or with this card as a mechanic, so if there's a way to play like a mid-range Emerald Steel that works, I tried really hard last set and the other ones, and it wasn't that as good. But now the new card in the go-go thing that just does a lot of lore, like I think there's potential for Emerald Steel without this card. And then I would like to see more color pairings being played. Like obviously blue purple is very fun to play, but it doesn't have any removal, so it's still like kind of out of the competitive game, I think. But the other pairing might see play, like the ruby still, like it's not that great, but the parrots might make it come up. So yeah, I'm excited for new color pairing or color pairing that exists but are plays very differently. Like also like Kevin mentioned for the ruby amethyst or any amethyst deck that runs the bounce package, like maybe we can play a purple deck without the bounce package now. So any ways to play the same color differently or new colors, that's what I'm looking forward to.
That's fair. If like I know Clara told us about what she was kind of cooking. Do you want? Is there a card? Is there a color combination you really want to work in the next set?
We talked about. Oh my gosh, one card. Okay.
Or just a color combination. That's fine.
Like-
You told us about things that you're working on, so maybe
Okay. I'm kind of a bit ashamed about that, but back in set 4, I was not happy about Bucky, and now I'm thinking like, yeah, the basil in Emerald Sapphire seems to be fun. I want to explore that. I'm like, oh no, I've got to the Dark Force. That's for sure.
It's fine. It's fine. It's not like a brainless card. You have to work for it. You have to do stuff about it. It's not just like slam flood borns.
Yeah.
And
but yeah, I want to see
so-
where that goes.
and I have to like concur with like wanting that basil to work. I want you to like try it in different shells. Like I said when Kevin was reviewing Emerald, I want to try it in like Emerald Steel just to see how good it works with like just hinging back more into like discard aspect, even though it's not like a very liked archetype from a lot of people. That's what Patrick was saying. But like, it's written good card all over the card, so that's why I want to try it. And maybe I want to hear from S4iler. Like you told us like what you think is gonna be good. Is there something that you think is not quite there yet, but you would like to be?
It's hard. I would say for myself for this metagame, what I want to do is to diversify in terms of like what I'm being good at or at least what I'm being known for a little bit more. So I'm gonna definitely try to play other type of decks and get reps into those. Because I think when we see, I think Azurite is one of the best, like most impactful set that we'll get since the beginning of the game, and every time we get those, it can shift the meta quite drastically. And I think like someone that can be more flexible in terms of like how different kind of deck that he can play is going to be good assets to be a competitive player. So that's what I'm working on right now.
That's fair.
And for me, I guess I'm really hoping to eventually have a good Amber Sapphire deck, either hero or princesses, or really like usually both, because most princesses are heroes.
Support.
Yeah, I mean maybe even support, right?
Support hero princesses, all of them.
But like there's a few overlapping synergies here, but there's stuff that Ravensburger is trying so hard to steer us into those directions, and so far the metagame has always been like, or almost always been like, we don't really care about that. Like,
we want to play Steel Song, red purple, blue red, green steel, and whatever.
But like the red challenge matters, or strength matters, the healing matters in Ember, the princesses and heroes, like there's a bunch of stuff. We even have a king sensor core that matters about princes and kings. Like,
yeah, it's so much worse than the queen, though. I was reading it when doing like my homework for this video, and I was like, why couldn't they make it good?
But like, I'd like to see in my pipe dreams like these archetypes, but especially Amber Sapphire heroes or princesses eventually be viable, because it's such a fun deck to play. It's such a fun restriction to build around. Like, I love it.
All right. Well, I'll have to say, I said that I wanted the basil to work in like most archetypes, so I kind of answered the question too. So I want to take the time to thank everyone for giving us their time. That was quite a piece. Thank you for being with us all evening long. We'll be seeing each other at the table. We'll probably be seeing each other via some video calls before Continentals. If not, we're going to see each other in Anaheim.
Yes. Very important thing coming up. S4iler, you've been selected for the Europe versus North American challenge, so we wish you the best on that. If you want to give us some information of like, when is it? How can we look at it? I know it hasn't been as publicized as the big events, because I'm like, is it even an official event?
No, it was Pavel that backed it, right?
Yes, exactly. So Pavel, the person who started Pixelborn, started this thing that is calling Cross Continental Challenge, and it basically was 8 people voted for North America and 8 for Europe, and we're gonna do a set 6 legal tournament beginning on November 18. So we're going to have like a few days to play against our opponent. It's going to be 8 rounds of Swiss plus top 4, best of 3. We'll have like 3 or 4 days to play our games. And it's all of those are going to be streamed. So you're going to be able to watch those on, I don't know exactly where, but follow Twitter or go into the Pixelborn
Follow S4iler on Twitter, on everything.
Yeah, exactly. And you'll for sure know about it. And it's a bunch of really good players, so I think it will be a fun to watch showcase matches. Like, of course, it's going to be competitive. Like, there's nothing, or at least not much on the line. It's mostly to just showcase
bragging rights.
good players and probably bragging rights. Right?
And I have good hopes for NA there, because for NA we've selected a lot of good players, and for Europe there are a lot of content creators. I don't want to say the content creators are not good, but you guys have much more star power when it comes to players.
Yeah.
It's gonna be an interesting watch for sure, because it's so early in the set. Like, there's no meta defined yet, so I'm sure this might have actually an impact of some of the continentals, like the EU that's coming next. So we'll see.
Probably
The problem is that people won't come up with their spice, most likely.
Yeah, potentially, if there's no big stakes, maybe.
I just want to say for the NA versus EU, there were a lot of people that voted for me. If you were one of those people, thank you very much. And it was very out of the blue, but really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a weird thing, right? Like, it was more of like a popularity contest, right? And it was always like I was feeling kind of bad, like, oh, well, there's all these other players that are not in there, right? But I feel really blessed for being voted in there, for sure.
And I feel like it would have been amazing to have you on there with all your spice and mad scientist brewing in there. That would have been like would have made for very interesting content.
Next time.
Yes.
There's gonna be like I said that in our last video with Pat and S4iler. Like, it's the first year of the game. We still have like a lot coming up. So
and keep building your brand, Clara. Keep building your brand, and it's gonna work out.
All right. So best of luck to you guys in Anaheim. Hopefully, I'm gonna see you there. Thanks, Drew. Thanks to you guys for joining up. Thanks to our viewers at home for staying up till that time. And until next time, keep questing.